What's up? This is E.J. Stewart.
What if I drop 40 days, 40 nights?
One, you can't do it.
All you are your words. If there's anything you learned about me, I'm going to keep it 100 with you.
Every morning, every night, for 40 days.
Going to be a long 40 days this year.
My skill shot will hold for your city for 40 days, 40 nights.
Rest in peace to all my ops.
For 40 days. If I can do that, then everything will be okay.
You're the guy who can't finish a sandwich. You think you can go 40 days? This isn't normal!
Oh, you're wrong, brother. I'm gonna go the distance.
Let's go! Let's go is right. What's up? This is E.J. Stewart. You are watching 40 Days, 40 Nights. We are on tonight, number 14 here on this Odyssey, where your boy E.J. Stewart here will give you 2 live streams per day, 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening, Monday through Friday, talking sports, talking pop culture, talking all the things EJ loves. I know we're starting this one a little late. Obviously, you usually start around 6 o'clock, 6:15, a little bit, so apologies for that. Wanted to get a few ducks in a row before we got it going, and now we're fully ready to go. This should be a really fun show today. We got a lot to get to, man. We're going a little bit around a lot of different sports, a lot of different topics. We have we got a couple people a little disgruntled, a little ornery, and not everyone's feeling a very kumbaya right now in terms of some of the stories we have. We'll talk about what's going on with the report that happened earlier this morning regarding the thought process of one Karl Anthony Towns, who, according to a report by Sam Amick, who did a very extensive report about the challenges that come with these teams that are currently operating in the hopes of trying to make a trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo. We learned that the Knicks center apparently not feeling so good about his current situation over some dealings that happened over this past offseason regarding the Knicks' pursuit for Giannis Antetokounmpo. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about a key update regarding the Super Bowl. One of the QBs showed up on the injury report and was limited in practice. We'll give you guys the details and the latest on that. We also have breaking really just about only maybe a half hour before we got on the air here, a brand new offensive coordinator in Philadelphia. And this has been a highly touted, I don't know how highly coveted it was, but definitely a much talked about position when it came to the coaching cycle this offseason because of all the hullabaloo about one Kevin Patullo and the poor job that he did as Eagles offensive coordinator last year. He's no longer remaining in that role as offensive coordinator. They hired someone new today, and it's kind of a stunner, at least from what I could tell, given the person's track record. This is not a name I expected to hear today. And it's a name that may be familiar to some of you folks because of the nature of his football life in very recent years. So we'll talk about the Eagles' new OC. We also got, again, talking about some odd commentary. It's not typical that I like to bring other voices in terms of takes onto this show. It goes back to a little bit of a philosophy to take you a little bit behind the scenes, a little bit of thought process of the show we did on Infinity Sports Network, Maggie and Perloff. I know a lot of you folks who watch me here on 40 Days, 4 Nights love that show and support that show, and that's why you're here. There's an idea that sometimes you don't want to do a take on a take. People are out there. We're all content creators. We're all people trying to give our thoughts, give our opinions, and then keep it moving. And I don't love the idea. I'm gonna have an opinion on somebody else having an opinion. It's kind of lame. I'm breaking my rule here. I only do it in a couple instances. And we will hear, I mentioned earlier in the day that I wanted to play some sound from Reggie Miller. I think I mentioned yesterday as well. We'll have that sound about Derrick Rose because that was quite bizarre and ironic. But that's more fun. This is more on I feel it's important to talk about it only because it deals with obviously a very polarizing athlete in Shedeur Sanders. But I think it speaks to, what has been some of the problems regarding not just the coverage of Shedeur Sanders, but what I would call quote-unquote support of Shedeur Sanders and perhaps the bad faith that I think is happening with that support, whether they mean to or not, that I think is actually, if he is somehow listening to this stuff, which I would say you would think he isn't, but we have evidence that he actually does listen to this stuff because of some issues that happened during the regular season that I think need to be countered purely because I think it's important for his career and important for folks who, if you do want him to succeed, then it's really important that you counter some of the nonsense, that noise that is out there. So that's the only reason why we'll talk some Shedeur Sanders, because there was one podcaster who's famous, who had a very, very, very off-base thought of how Shedeur Sanders should approach year 2 with the Cleveland Browns. And finally, we will also talk, speaking of other podcasters, we got some details from another podcaster regarding where things stand currently with J. Cole and Drake. We had the Birthday Blizzard 26 come out. I thought it was fire. Talked about it a bunch yesterday. I still am listening to 99 Build. I don't know how many plays I've given it, but it's probably far too many. I think J. Cole's rapping on that mixtape is phenomenal. I'm very excited for the fall off. We'll also get some fall off news as well, some very important news, and it may actually be related to this thing about this maybe rift that's happened now between Drake and J. Cole since what happened 2 years ago now. I keep wanting to say last year. It's not last year anymore. Not almost 2 years ago. Since the infamous squabble, no pun intended, with Drake and Kendrick Lamar. Lyrical squabble, obviously. There was no physical fighting between those two. The lyrical squabble between Drake and Kendrick Lamar that has continued into the conversations and continues to be part of our lexicon even today. And some details maybe about where things stand with J. Cole and Drake, I think that are important to talk about here. So we got a lot to get to, man. This is going to be a fun one. 40 days, 40 nights. Again, streaming live, as we always do, on YouTube, New Generation Media. If you're on YouTube, thanks for the wait. Or everybody who's waiting, thanks for the wait. I know this is probably one of the latest I started in terms of a scheduled time. Again, apologies for that. Thanks for the wait. We're rocking. We're ready to go. Full show. It's going to be a lot of fun. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you do everything you can to support the channel in those ways. We greatly appreciate that. Also, we're streaming live on X, EJ_Stewart. Be sure to follow me on X as well. You can also, I learned today, I did not know this because I rarely get comments on X, but because shout out to CP the franchise. I actually can see comments on X. There was a little bit of a question mark, I think, when I started this about can I actually see comments on X. I wasn't sure, and this software that I use, the details I was getting were kind of skittish in terms of if I could. I know I've seen comments on IG. I've seen, and we'll get to IG in a second. I've seen comments on YouTube, but not yet on X. But then shout out to CP the franchise, who obviously is Knicks content creator, NBA commentator, who does phenomenal work, obviously with his platform. Knicks Fan TV, and he does a bunch of other, obviously NBA content as well. So he's like, salute EJ, and I was like, hey, first X comment. We got someone in there who actually commented. We had yesterday we had hundreds of viewers on X, nobody commenting, just watching. So that was neat, and I really thought that was really cool that he commented. And I think it's just good information. We know, okay, you can actually comment on X. So if you comment on X, I'll put you up on the screen just like I do my folks on YouTube when they comment, and on Instagram as well. Action EJ is where we're also obviously streaming live as well. Make sure you follow me there. Make sure you follow me on TikTok as well. Action EJ, where I also post clips from the show. So you want to get those, make sure you follow me on Instagram, Action EJ. And like I say every show, just important note, all these episodes get podcasted to our audio channel, New Generation Podcast Network. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts. New Generation Podcast Network, where you'll find all the audio versions of every episode of 40 Days and 40 Nights. We posted last night's episode. I know I was late on that because of my fun extravaganza with New York Post Sports, where we were doing the watch party for the Knicks game. So I got home a little late last night. Wasn't able to post night 13 of 40 Days and 40 Nights, which was a dandy because we got my guy Tommy Beer in to come in and talk about the whole Giannis Knicks situation. And that's where, again, we had all these viewers, all the support, and I really appreciated you guys for rocking with me last night. That audio version is now up. We posted that earlier in the morning. We also posted, obviously, day 14 earlier in the morning as well. So everything is up. We're all, set to go. And again, this episode, night 14, will be posted later tonight. So just stay locked in. Again, this is going to be a doozy and a good one. I'm really excited for you guys to be joining me here for night 14 of 40 Days and 40 Nights. So let's get the ball rolling, man. Let's talk about what's going on with Karl Anthony Towns. So there was a report, like I mentioned earlier, from the Athletics, Sam Amick. He says that there's complications that go with any team that's pursuing Giannis Antetokounmpo, especially because of the very public nature with which the details get out about the lengths these teams are going to try to trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo. We've already seen details about obviously the Warriors and the package that they're apparently already ready to offer that would include Jimmy Butler and Jonathan Kuminga and a lot of first round draft picks. Now, Kuminga is somebody who probably wants to be gone, and Jimmy Butler probably someone who knows he's a goner. So maybe it's not as much of an issue trying to massage those guys, so to speak. But for a lot of other teams that have players that are important to them, and if they do not obviously make the trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo or they get outbid for Giannis, will still be important to them moving forward. And that includes the New York Knicks, and he used the Knicks as a kind of cautionary tale. Because we've had this season with Karl Anthony Towns that has been underwhelming by his standards. He's still averaging 20 and 10. He's still a highly productive big man who's versatile offensively, but he's had major defensive issues. His offense has been up and down in terms of efficiency, and he has spoken about this constant struggle that he has had in terms of understanding his role under new head coach Mike Brown. Well, now there's a lot more we're learning to that because according to Sam Amick in his article for The Athletic earlier today, he says that Cat harbored hard feelings for how things went down this summer when the Knicks and the Bucks were having conversations about adding Giannis Antetokounmpo to the Knicks. And I guess this is not confirmation. I don't think we ever knew this for sure, but this is confirmation that those talks centered around Giannis for Cat. Cat is apparently, according to Sam Amick, he harbored hard feelings about those negotiations in the summer that he said have extended up until today. So these are hard feelings that Cat still has about what went down over the summer and the Knicks' attempts to try to trade him for Giannis Antetokounmpo. And that is why Amick points that out, as to say, not just the Knicks, who will continue to have to manage this situation, but any other team that gets involved with this. This is the dangerous game you play, that if you don't actually land Giannis Antetokounmpo, you still have to move on with your life with these human beings who may feel a way about being put on the trade market in such a public way. Now, to be fair, those negotiations were not really public. It wasn't really until we got those weird reports from, who was it? Was Shams, kind of talking about Giannis is now open to being traded or something to those ilks or that. And then he says, then that's when he added, last summer, what you guys didn't know was that the Knicks and Giannis had, and the Knicks and Bucks had a exclusive window to try to make a trade. And we were like, wait, what? We didn't know this. So these were details that, quite frankly, weren't public while it was happening. It only became public, around training camp time. That was when all this stuff came out. So Cat apparently is still not happy with the idea that he was being shopped. I would assume he's still being shopped when it comes to this Giannis pursuit, because we've heard, according from Ian Bagley and many others, and there was plenty of reports today that the Knicks are indeed in the mix and one of the heavy suitors that are trying to get Giannis Antetokounmpo and put him in blue and orange. Again, you have the Heat who are in the mix, the Warriors who are in the mix, the T-Wolves who were described today as a long shot, but they are also apparently in the mix for Giannis Antetokounmpo. So here's what I'll say on Cat. There's an impetus to immediately you hear he's frustrated by the idea that he may have been traded and he's holding hard feelings over that, and you immediately kind of go, oh, here we go again. Here's this guy who is not able to kind of have the mental toughness to get over the fact that he's a professional and that's over, and he should be playing at a higher level given all the things that this team is still trying to accomplish with him on the team. And I understand that sentiment, but I do want to pause for a second and say, these again are human beings, and considering Cat coming here last season, he played really well. He was an all-star, a legitimate all-star. He was in many ways a lot of things the Knicks were missing offensively as a stretch five. Was he perfect? No. Did he do things that drive you crazy? Yes. That's just who he's always been as his career. But last year was probably one of the best overall seasons for Karl Anthony Towns, both as an individual and when it came to team success, because he was a big reason also why the Knicks were able to advance so far into the playoffs, advancing just 2 games away from making the NBA Finals, losing 6 games to the Eastern Conference Finals to the Indiana Pacers in a series that, while again he was one of the reasons they lost for sure, he also had some big moments in that series to extend the series and keep the Knicks in it. So it wasn't like he embarrassed himself in the playoffs. It wasn't like he had these moments where he was coming up super small. We're very critical of Cat as Knicks fans, but he did his thing for the most part last season. So do I understand, considering the season that he had, he's playing back in his kind of hometown area. He's from Jersey. He's not from the city, but he's from the area. He's worked out at Gaucho Gym, which is what he's talked about. So he takes pride in being a Knick. I can understand from just a human aspect of having hard feelings when it comes to not wanting to be traded or potentially being traded after the season you put on. He played hurt as well. There's a lot of different things that went on last year. With that being said, that is why this has become very tricky for the Knicks in this situation. It is why I think if they are really going to go after Giannis Antetokounmpo, you can't miss this time. You can't miss this time. Because I think what I have seen from Karl Anthony Towns, and I have been critical of him, and I will remain critical of him, is this idea that he's been being and moaning about just, my role, and I don't know exactly how I fit here. I played this time from Ramona Shelburne that I feel it kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit when we talked about that issue with Draymond Green and Mike Brown hugging Draymond Green and laughing at him and all that stuff. The stuff that I thought was absolutely outrageous and I couldn't stand it. And I thought it was, in many ways, if I was Karl Anthony Towns, I said, why would I want to play for this guy? Why would I want to play for this team? But that's how they're going to stand up for me. Those are feelings I still believe. And it makes a lot of sense now, given a lot of things we're seeing, how he has been this year. But what was said during that spiel by Ramona Shelburne, talking about how that did not play well within the Knicks organization, not just with the locker room, but just the organization itself, was at the end of it when she said, especially considering this is a guy who has struggled to get on the same page with Mike Brown over his touches. So we know that the tangible issue. I don't think Ramona Shelburne is just shooting from the hip. She is pretty tight as when it comes to being a reporter. She is saying that Karl Anthony Towns has problems with his touches. Now we don't know if it's the amount, we don't know if it's where he's getting the ball, but the touches have been the center point of his frustration with the Knicks offense and with Mike Brown, and it's someone that he's not gotten on the same page with. So you have that aspect and that whole situation where he is seemingly taking that into all parts of his game this season. We've seen the defensive slip. We've seen the lapses in judgment. We've seen the lapses in focus. I want to give him credit for last night's performance against the Raptors. It was a terrible shooting performance, and he continues to shoot the ball by his standards poorly, not by regular NBA player standards, but by his standards poorly. And I do think there is a reality that, like I said before, that there is age, there is wear and tear, there are physical reasons why he also may potentially be taking a step back this year. But all those things also could apply to his mental state. And if he really is, to this day, still harboring hard feelings about him being dangled in trade discussions for Giannis Antetokounmpo, then I think if you're the Knicks, you need to kind of make this a quick and fast pursuit. And if you can't get it done, I think you got to pull the plug and you got to almost do something they haven't done. Come out and make a statement saying this is the team that we have. We're not trading anybody, and we're moving forward with this team, and we're going to hope to win a championship. Like, if you can get Giannis Antetokounmpo, I've said this, and this has been a flip from me, and I'm someone, like I said, I'm not one of these people who get on a mic and just stay on their stance, and regardless of whatever new information you see or things to the contrary of what you believe, just stay on it just for the sake of staying on it. I think that is not being a human. I don't think that's being realistic. I don't think that's being authentic for your audience, because no person lives their entire life just thinking one way their entire time, and then when they get new information or new details or new facts or just situations just not going how they thought it would go, just say, I still believe how I believe anyway. It's completely ridiculous. In fact, some of that, I say people do that in their personal life. We do see some of that in our political life and stuff. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have all the issues that we got, right? So to me, I have not and will never ever do that as a commentator or anybody anytime I'm stepping into a mic. So I said weeks ago, I did not want Giannis Antetokounmpo. I thought the Knicks, the way they were playing at a high level, they were 23-9, just games away from being the number one seed in the Eastern Conference. I didn't think it was necessary to make a roster shifting trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo, especially given his injury history, both of past years and of this season. And I think that the Knicks have everything they need, and I don't know if I say I still do, but they definitely have a lot of talent, and there's no reason why they shouldn't, on paper, be the team to come out of the East this year and get to the NBA Finals. That was my feeling. That changed in large part because of the what felt like the obvious issues that were centered based in Karl Anthony Towns and his performance. Is he the entire reason why things weren't going well? Of course not. It's a team game. And Mikal Bridges yesterday took ownership for some of the struggles the Knicks have had. But I mentioned, like I said with Tommy yesterday, when you consider the offensive decline and you consider his defensive issues, which are always going to be there, but have been particularly crushing this year because of it seems like even worse lack of focus. And when combined with the offensive decline, I don't think it's a good fit when you have a superstar point guard who's your best player, who you have to play a lot of minutes. Therefore, they have to play a lot of minutes together and gives teams basically a blueprint on how to attack you. I just don't think when you're playing against the elite teams in the NBA or just the very good teams in the NBA, I think the Knicks are going to have problems if this is the version of Karl Anthony Towns they're going to have. If you're telling me you have the Karl Anthony Towns from last season, then that's a whole different ballgame. Karl Anthony Towns was great last season. He had a great season last year. I think he had a great postseason last year, and I keep saying that. This version, no, I want no part of. Like I said, it reminds me of the worst of the Julius Randle experience, but with a smile. Julius Randle did it with a scowl. He does it with a smile and a laugh. But it's the same stuff. It's the same crap. It's the lack of focus. It's the no defense. It's the being aloof. It's showing up to games, acting like you don't care. It's the lack of hustle. It's all the same stuff in terms of the worst of the Julius Randle experience. Except, again, Julius comes, he's flipping laptops. He's scowling at people. He's being angry. With Karl Anthony Towns, he's smiling, he's laughing, but he's doing the same stuff. It's the same effect. It's the same effect. So to me, if that's the guy that the Knicks have, and you can't win with him, then I would rather take a risk with Karl Anthony Towns with Giannis Antetokounmpo than continue with Cat. Now, I've been saying that when I heard about the Hornets, the Grizzlies, the Magic, some of these teams that apparently the Knicks had conversations with about Karl Anthony Towns, I said, fine, good. Even if it's not for Giannis. If you have a deal that makes sense, that maybe you don't get a player of the caliber of Karl Anthony Towns as an individual, but the sum of the parts maybe are greater than the individual, then I'm also for that trade too. They can get a really competent backup point guard. They can get another defensive center that they can juxtapose Mitchell Robinson. I would do that as well. I would really consider using Karl Anthony Towns to get multiple assets for this team that they need. Because again, Cat, in my opinion, the way he has played this year, he has not been the same offensive hub and reliable offensive scorer that you would want. So that's why I say the Knicks, if you are trying to get Giannis, you better get this guy. You better get him. Because now his name is thrown into the conversation again. We now have this reporting that he has hard feelings against the Knicks, so now he's got the answer to this. And I just think the Karl Anthony Towns, his temperament, I don't think handles this level of adversity very well. I'm not saying he's someone that can't handle adversity at all. He showed great ways of handling adversity during last year's playoffs for the most part. But considering how he started the season and considering how he's played this year and the evidence I have when it comes to this particular situation, he clearly is not handling this level of adversity well because all he has done is complain. According to Stefan Bondi of the New York Post, he's still clamoring for Tom Thibodeau and talking about how good Tom Thibodeau was. And now with Sam Amick saying he's still holding hard feelings towards the New York Knicks. Again, if that's who this guy is at this point, you're not winning with this version of Karl Anthony Towns. Whatever the vision Knicks had for him, what he could be, he's not that guy. He's not. So this is what we're gonna have, and now he's gonna be in more trade talks and more things like that. And Knicks have, to me, two roads. You pull the trigger and do what it takes to get Giannis Antetokounmpo, or there's three things. If you do that, you say, all right, you know what? Whatever the Bucks need, let's get it to them. Let's get this thing going. We got to change things. Because we're not going to win with now Karl Anthony Towns now still moping around with the team, even though we didn't get Giannis, wondering if he's going to be traded in the offseason for Giannis, or if Giannis is somewhere else, maybe be traded for some other guy. And he's going to be holding that against us while we're trying to win a championship. We have no time for that. We have no time for that. So if that's going to be a reality, then you got to move on from him and to say, let's get this Giannis thing done. Or plan B, like I said, call those other teams and say, hey, we're shopping them. What pieces do you have? What would you want that we can get to help our team? And you're not getting an all-star center in return, or all-star player maybe even in return. But that's okay. It's not necessarily what the team needs. The team is a great offensive team. They don't need more offense. They need certain pieces. They need a backup guard. They need more depth on the wing. They are pieces that they need, And then if you lose Cat, obviously you need another center, but they kind of need another center anyway. That's why they've been into Yves Missy from New Orleans. So like if you can get those pieces, combine those pieces into Karl Anthony Towns and make that a trade, I'd be open to that too. It's gotta be the right pieces. I'm not just giving them away, but for the right pieces, I think you absolutely have to consider that. That's number 2. Or number 3. It is something that may never happen and may make Leon Rose scared to death, but I think if they want to save this season and save this guy, if he's going to be a Knick beyond this season, then what has to happen is if you realize, because I think these teams know, you could be in the negotiation, you could be in the talks, and I also think that there are teams like the Bucks who are getting all these offers who will continue to use your name in the media and use your name in the press to continue to drive up the price for the asset they're trying to get rid of, even if you're not a real serious contender. I feel like we've heard stories of teams calling other teams, say, hey, can we use you as a team and say that you were interested in me so that we can get some more money from this other team? And teams will say, sure, whatever, I don't care. We don't want you, and it's not going to impact me. So, yes. So that happens. What the Knicks can have happen, given if Karl Anthony Towns is going to be a member of this team beyond the rest of the season, they want to be the team they want to be this year, then Leon Rose needs to step to a microphone, step in front of a camera in the next some odd days, once they realize they are no longer in the Giannis Antetokounmpo sweepstakes, and make a full-throated support for the roster that they currently have, and say, these are the guys we're going to play with. We believe in Karl Anthony Towns, and we're going to try to win the Eastern Conference Championship and get to the finals. Just be as clear as day that whatever was the issue or whatever conversation, it doesn't matter. We're not on that. What I don't think is good for this team to now have Karl Anthony Towns, who not even publicly was being discussed in trade rumors, because we didn't know about this. We only knew about this months later because Shams, prior to training camp, put out a headline that talked about Giannis and his murky future with the Bucks, and it detailed things that we didn't know over the summer. So these weren't even public trade talk that happened. It wasn't like he was dangled around for weeks not knowing what his future was. He just, I mean, now maybe he did know this was happening during the summer, I'm not sure. But for the public, we just learned he was in trade talks. And it wasn't like this was some public thing, publicly, spoken about thing that we knew about. No one knew. That was then. That was when he didn't actually have to play while his name is being dangled in trade rumors. Now it's different. Now he's actually having to play with the Knicks pursuing this guy. Now he's going to have to play the rest of the season if they don't get him, knowing that the Knicks were trying to actively trade him during the season, not knowing his life was going to be upended. And we can say, oh, Karl Anthony Towns, just get over it. He should be a big man. None of that matters. He's on the team. These things about, and yes, I'm one of the biggest people saying players absolutely have agency and they need to step up when they're not doing their job. I get that. But we also have to be realistic about who these guys are. If Karl Anthony Towns is going to have issues with his name being mentioned in trade talks, and if you're not serious about being able to acquire Giannis Antetokounmpo during this trade deadline, then just come out and say nobody's getting traded. Just say it. I don't think that there's any major flaw or major things that, in fact, it may end up, the only thing that's maybe in theory you may help another team get Giannis, because if they know the Knicks aren't in the picture, then maybe it's one less suitor for the Bucks. I just don't think you should really care about that. That's not really of your concern. I know the Heat are in it, and in theory they're an Eastern Conference team. I'm not really that worried about a Heat team with Giannis and Bam. I'm not. I'm sorry. That team is not scary. That's not a team I look at and say, oh, this is a team that's going to win a championship or really seriously contend in the East. Are they a good team? Yeah. Are they a team that, in a playoff series? Yeah, it will be competitive. That Heat team I'm watching right now, they're a decent team. But a big three of what? Powell, Giannis, and Bam? I'm not shaking in my boots over that. I'm sorry. I'm not. So if that's what you're scared of, that's not realistic. If he goes to the Warriors, all right, well, he's going to a team in the West who's ancient. So he probably has a 1 or 2 year window at best to win a title over there. So why do I care if he goes to the Warriors? Those are things that shouldn't matter to the Knicks. Now, again, that requires Leon Rose doing something he has never done or rarely ever does, which is hold himself accountable to the media and to the fans in that way in which he actually talks to somebody. Damn sure don't want to talk to no reporters. He'll talk to, and I know Alan Hahn obviously has been a reporter for a long time, But, he'll talk to Alan Hahn and sit down and get, I don't know what the question. He may not know the questions. I don't want to accuse he's getting fed tailored questions. I don't want to infringe on Alan Hahn's credibility on that at all, because I got a lot of respect for Alan Hahn. But, you're getting questions, from state media, because, it is MSG. That is a fact. That's not, unless that's the scenario, this guy doesn't want to talk to anybody. And to be clear, it's not something that really bothers me that much. There have been a few moments where I felt like we need to hear from the coach, from the president of the team. I remember very vividly the 2022 season that was from hell, the second year with Tom Thibodeau, with Evan Fournier starting all those games, and how bad they were playing, and the teams, all these hopes they had of being a contender in the East, and they fell so flat on their face, and we heard nothing from the president. That was one where I kept yelling, we need to hear from Leon Rose about what the F is going on with this team. There have been moments here and there, but most of the time, him not having to talk to the media has not, in my opinion, impacted his ability to do his job at all. At all. He's done a phenomenal job turning around the New York Knicks. He took over a complete wasteland and turned them into a legitimate contending team, a team that is so enticing that apparently a top 5 player in the NBA and one of the legitimate greatest players of all time wants to play for them. I don't give a damn about Leon Rose and his lack of willingness to talk to the media. It's not something that I care about at all. But what I will say is, if this is a situation with Cat not feeling supported, not feeling loved, and then you have to keep this guy, he's going to be on the team still. He's going to have to still be an important factor for this team in their efforts to try to get to the NBA Finals this year. Then you're going to have to do things outside of your comfort zone in order to make that happen. And it may not be the greatest thing. It may not be something you want to do. It may seem kind of ridiculous. You may feel like, Cat, you're a pro. You're a star player. Part of the reason why we even have this conversation about Giannis is because you're good enough to even begin these conversations. But that's just, again, they're human beings, and we can't control that. We cannot control how Cat's going to feel. We can control how our efforts to try to support him, if he indeed is going to be a key piece of this team moving forward. So Leon Rose, if Giannis is not a reality, which it's right now, it's still so unclear in terms of how realistic is this thing for the Knicks. Some people will tell you it's very realistic. Some people will tell you it's not realistic because they have no draft picks. We just don't know. But we are being told that they are aggressive pursuers. If you're aggressive, make that freaking trade, make it happen. Or when you realize that it's not possible because you don't have the assets necessary to make the trade, get in front of a camera and say, hey, man, we love Cat. Cat's our guy, and we're riding with him. We believe we can win a title with him. That's what you have to do to try to save this season and save face moving forward. Or, again, the third thing, trade this guy somewhere else. While you're doing this Giannis ordeal and trying to figure out, if you can trade for Giannis, you should be, like they've been doing, call these other teams and say, hey, try and work out this Giannis thing. If the Giannis thing doesn't work out, and then you got other deals, and if you got come up to another deal that's better, we understand that. But if you still have your same roster for the most part, what would you want for Karl Anthony Towns? What could we get for him? Put a deal in place. Put a deal in place that if this doesn't happen, you go right to this. Very similarly to what happened with the Mets and Bo Bichette and the whole Kyle Tucker situation, which they had been talking to Bo Bichette for weeks, we learned, prior to any of this stuff. We thought it was just, Steve Cohen lost a bidding war to the Dodgers and he got mad next morning and just gave, panic money to Bo Bichette, when we learned that wasn't the case. The Mets had these conversations about Bo Bichette. They talked to him about, hey, there's a possibility we might be interested in a short-term deal. Would you be interested in that? And they knew that he would. So as this thing was going down, they knew if Tucker goes here, we know exactly what our move is going to be. And that's why it happened so fast. That's why it was so immediate, essentially. Next morning, the Mets have a new third baseman who's an all-star. The Knicks, there's no reason why they can't operate in the same way. If Giannis, as soon as that thing, you fall short and it doesn't work out, all right, we have a deal in place with the Charlotte Hornets already, or we have a deal in place with the Orlando Magic already to get Karl Anthony Towns out, because I don't have a lot of faith that he will be able to get over this, unless you really, again, show that love and show him that support. But you're gonna have to do it in a way that's been uncomfortable for the Knicks. I think Karl Anthony Towns is gonna need to find that love and feel that love, and That's okay. I don't think that's even like the biggest ask. I don't. You never talk. You never say anything. So like for this one time for a very important player, if it's gonna help the Knicks and help the team moving forward, do the right thing. Do the right thing. I don't know why this would be something that's such a challenge. Why this would be such an issue for Leon Rose and the Knicks. So we'll see what ends up happening. I just look at this, man, and it's crazy that the Knicks are in this position where, as Sam Amick really put it, it is in some ways a rock and a hard place. Because what do you do? Like, if you have a guy who's disgruntled because you're going after a player, but it's a player that any team in theory, if they could acquire him, would have to at very least explore. How do you manage that? How do you figure it out? It's not easy. And that was the whole premise of that part of the article from Sam Amick. But it's going to take the Knicks to actually do some work. It's not going to just happen on its own. It's not going to just happen by osmosis. And you know what? Oh, things weren't going well. Things were rocky. He's upset, and Giannis didn't come. It just worked out. Karl Anthony Towns just got over it, and we won a championship. You're gonna have to do more. You have to figure out that he's not fitting in his team anymore, given how he feels. If he is still harboring feelings over the summer about what happened, figure out a way to get him somewhere else. Again, or maybe move this whole situation in a different way, and maybe step to a mic and say, "Hey, listen, this is our guy. We support him, and we feel confident in his abilities to be a factor for this team moving forward." Let's just gear to it, man. Let's get to talking about the Super Bowl. So we haven't talked much about the Super Bowl because it's kind of like that dead week, where it's Pro Bowl week, which Shedeur Sanders ironically became the story of the week, and we're going to talk about him a little bit today as well. But I want to talk about some interesting news, important news we got this week. And it's been conversations that I actually didn't realize were really happening until today about the health of Drake Maye. So he had taken a hard hit in the AFC Championship game in the third quarter that apparently may have given him some shoulder discomfort. And the Patriots had been very much downplaying this up until today. But then they practiced today, and he's a limited participant in practice. And he's listed as limited due to a right shoulder injury. What his injury is, we don't know. The severity, we don't know. What we do know is in the open portion of practice where the media is there to watch, Drake Maye, along with his backups, all the quarterbacks, they did no throwing. So that means Josh Dobbs and all those guys, I guess, that are on that stuff, they did no throwing. And you say, okay, well, what's the big deal with that? It's maybe he threw when closed practice happened. It's important because the way Mike Vrabel apparently has always done this thing, the way he's always done practice, is that portion the quarterbacks always throw. So it is noteworthy that on this day in the open practice, when he's limited in practice, which essentially means he did not take the normal reps he would. That's how they classify someone being, someone being limited. We know that he didn't take those reps. Obviously, we knew it because we saw it. We saw him not take practice. None of those guys did, but those other guys weren't listed as injured. He's the only guy that was. So we don't know what happened behind closed doors, but in the open portion of practice where the media is there, he did not throw. So he did talk about it, and he had a kind of humorous response. And it shows that Drake Maye is good at this, and I think he's going to be a fine kind of ambassador of an organization from this standpoint. But he was asked, people are obviously concerned about your injury. He says he's not concerned about it. He was asked, are you surprised by all the talk about the fact that, that you may be hurt and people want to know what's going on? Here's what he said.
Surprised? No, I wouldn't say I'd be surprised. I mean, it's the right shoulder of a starting quarterback in an NFL team, so.
That's funny. It's like, surprised. I mean, it's the right shoulder of a starting quarterback. No, I'm not surprised people want to know what the hell's going on. So he breaks with humor. He seems to be kind of a charming guy from what we've seen initially. So that was Maye basically saying, no, I'm not surprised people want to know about this. It's my shoulder and I'm a quarterback. He also could have said it's the Super Bowl in a week and a half. So he downplayed it, but he had some humor there. This was also Mike Vrabel. He was asked about it. He also said he is not concerned.
What is your level of concern on that?
Not much. I try not to have a whole lot of concern. I just want to try to prepare the football team and make sure that everybody's ready and that we all have a plan, and not to surprise anybody, and make sure that our guys are focusing on the first and second down.
Yeah, and it was a funny response. I left that part in there because he kept going back to our focus today is just focused on our plan for first and second down. I guess, all right, well, we know what the purpose of today's practice was for the Patriots is everybody be on the same page of how they are going to approach first and second down for the Super Bowl. Even when the questions were about Maye's injury, he somehow reverted it back to where is focused on making sure everyone knows the plan for first and second down. And it's like, which, Mike Vrabel from the Belichick tree, maybe not. I don't know if he ever was actually an assistant, but obviously he played for Belichick. He's learned a lot from Belichick, And this is how NFL coaches are, right? You're just keeping guys focused, everyone being engaged on the same mindset. So it's one of those things where it's like TBD. We just don't know what to think of his injury, how hurt he is. What I would say is when it comes to his injury and the shoulder is for someone who has had some difficulties with consistency in the passing game and consistency with his play in the postseason, I've said that I think he's gotten away with playing extremely mid for the majority of this postseason. I've said that he has essentially gotten to play what has turned out to be the first two games, definitely like pseudo scrimmage games. Like those teams had no chance to move the ball against Patriots for various different reasons. So as long as he wasn't completely self-destructive, nothing he could have done would have lost those games. So it ends up being a great learning experience. He's able to make mistakes. He's able to turn the ball over. He's able to learn the speed of the NFL playoffs. Like, I think it was most guys who go through that, they have to suffer a loss. Like, you remember Peyton Manning suffering early playoff losses. You remember a lot of these quarterbacks, some guys still trying to get over the hump, like Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, right? But those guys, they've had to have those mistakes happen through losses. He got lucky enough with the matchups he had that he was able to have those games that against most very good championship caliber teams would be easy losses. They were wins. He's like, okay, good. I got to learn from that. I can learn from that and apply it to the next week. All right, okay, another game. I get to learn that and apply it to the next week. Now, last week wasn't a scrimmage because they were playing against a team that was in a snowstorm. It was a very close game. So, like, it was not a scrimmage. It was not, like, that unserious. But he also, because of the other team, their inability to move the ball, he didn't have to have a monster game for them to win. That, at the very least, you can say. That is 100% the case. So, I think he's entering now the Super Bowl, though. And Maggie mentioned a couple of days ago, I mentioned how I'm very confident in the Seahawks right now. That's who I'm picking. There is that one hang-up that I think most people who watch this game have, and I think if you are picking the Patriots, unless assuming you're not from New England, you're just riding with the Patriots because that's your team, I think your hang-up is probably going to be, I know I saw from Sam Darnold last week, but I still don't trust it. I think that's your hang-up. I think if you look at these teams head-to-head, based on how they played in the postseason, based on how they played during the regular season, the Seahawks have been a better team. And they are playing like a better team. That does not preclude Sam Darnold to, like I say, being, as I call him, the Eugene of the NFL, the character Eugene from Hey Arnold, where he was just a jinx, and it seemed like anything that could go wrong for him would go wrong for him, even though he just seemed like a nice guy, and there's no reason why bad things should keep happening to him. It seemed like he had bad karma for no reason, and it was kind of sad. That's how I feel about Sam Darnold as an NFL player. Albeit, like, man, he's one game away from, I can't really say that if he wins the Super Bowl, obviously. But what would be the most jinx, most Eugene thing for him to do? Would be to have this great playoff run, then get to the Super Bowl against a team that looks very inferior, and you crap the bed. That would be very Eugene. That would be very much, here we go again with Sam Darnold. So, but that is really the only thing you have in terms of if you're saying, oh, I like the Patriots in this game. Is that you think that the Patriots, being the good teams that they are, given their preparation and given who Sam Darnold has been in his career, you don't think he can live up to the moment. That's what you got. And it's not to say that Drake Maye can't also then win a game like that, but if that doesn't happen and Darnold plays relatively well, then Maye cannot play in anywhere near shape and form how he played these first three playoff games at all. So there is an aspect of, like, if he is also now compromised, along with the fact that he is not quite yet figured out NFL playoff football in terms of he's winning these games, but is he playing good or great? I wouldn't go that far. That part of it, I think, would give you some concern. So we'll see what happens, man. Again, the Patriots didn't seem like they were panicking. we haven't gotten any more reporting on it from what I saw before I got on here. I will say, like, the Sam Darnold stuff with his oblique seemed way more, like, concerning and dire, maybe because it was brand new. Vrabel was asked in this press conference, like, was this a new old injury that he re-aggravated, or is it something that, like, happened to him in the last game, or happened to him as we got into this week, and now is an injury? And Vrabel's wording was, if it was something he was dealing with before, he would have been on an injury report before. So he is saying publicly that this is a new injury. Now, as my friend Andrew Perloff says, when coaches are moving their mouths, typically they're lying. So it doesn't mean he's telling the truth, but that is indeed what he's saying. So we'll see what ends up happening with Drake Maye. I want to get in the comment section before we continue. We got some other good stories coming up here. So to my guy Dexter Henry watching on YouTube. Sup, Dex? Thanks for everything last night. It was a lot of fun being on the New York Post Sports New York Got Game Knicks watch party with him and Brian Fonseca. I thought that they're just an A1 team. The whole squad over at New York Post Sports was phenomenal, and I thought the show went really well from my standpoint. It seemed like you guys enjoyed it as well, and the viewers enjoyed it as well. So shout out to Dex. He's a great dude. We're gonna get him on soon. We also got a question here from Matthew Graves, who's in the chat. Shout out to Matthew Graves. We talked about Karl Anthony Towns just a little bit ago. He said, "Do you think he's trying to stick it to the Knicks because they seem to be out on him?" That has been a thought process of, I think, reasonable Knicks fans that have said, "Oh, he's dogging it because he wants to stick it to them." He's like, "Oh, okay, you guys don't believe in me. All right, watch this. Watch me kind of just dog it. Watch me give no effort. Like, why am I gonna give it all for a team that is not all in on me?" Because, like I've said, I know he's an imperfect player, very imperfect. So he had bad moments last year, even bad moments in the playoffs. But relatively speaking, for him and what you expect, I thought Karl Anthony Towns gave great effort and played really well. And played through injury. Again, he had knee stuff. He said his finger was broken. We don't know if it actually was broken, but he had nicks and knacks the entire year. It was very clear watching him play. He was playing banged up. And he still was producing. So, yeah, just being a human, just being a realist, do you look at that and say, him playing last year through all that stuff, he comes in this year and say, wait, you guys now want to trade me after I put it all on the line for you guys last year? I was playing through injury during the playoffs, and now you're trying to get rid of me? All right, man, whatever. You fired my coach, the guy I did not want fired? All right. Yeah, it's a reasonable thing for him to think that he is doing that. It's not reasonable to do, like, in terms of, like, you're a professional athlete, like, you're a pro, and you're trying to win a championship, and the reality is there is nothing's a foregone conclusion. It's like, oh, your days of the Knicks are definitely numbered. Like, they might not get Giannis, and if they don't get Giannis, it super increases your chances of you remaining a Knick. So you may be here for a while, bro. Like, to take this, it's like, you know what it reminds me of? And I heard this story earlier, and you know what? I wish I had the sound, and because it would have been a funny story. And I know I've played funny stories, and we'll have Reggie Miller sound later in the show. But Danny Green, he recently, I guess, launched a podcast. I do not remember who it was with, so apologies to whoever his co-host was, and I guess the name of the podcast. But he launched a new podcast, and he was telling the story about the infamous Ben Simmons situation in Philadelphia, how that broke down. And, you know, he's going through everything because he was on the team. I kind of forgot he was on the team. He was like, yeah, I was on the team. He's like, yeah, you know, they played the Hawks. The whole thing happened where he passed the ball. He did pass the ball, and everybody was blaming him. And then the press conference after the game when they lost Game 7 to the Hawks, Doc Rivers was asked, do you think you win a championship with Ben Simmons as your point guard? And Doc said, I don't know. Which is still crazy. It's the honest truth. It was truthful, Doc Rivers there. But in terms of just having zero interest in that moment in time or zero awareness to understand, like, the gravity of what you may be saying in that moment in time by not backing your franchise point guard. Like, it's whatever you want to say about Ben Simmons right now. Like, I always feel it's funny we talk about Ben Simmons like he's always been some bum. Like, no, there was at one point in time he was like not even like a good NBA. He was like a great NBA player at one point. Again, was he perfect? No. Guy couldn't shoot a lick, wouldn't shoot. We know those are issues. But there are a lot of other things he did on an NBA floor that were really impactful and really helpful and helped the Sixers win. Like, this is a guy they still needed, in theory. And he was a very productive player. He was a multiple-time All-Star. And to be like, and yes, he also was a big part of the reason why they lost that series and lost that Game 7. But Doc, in that moment, because he's probably sitting there being like, my freaking 6'10" point guard, who's a brick house, is right under the basket, and he's so afraid to shoot in crunch time that he's throwing the ball out, even though he's guarded by Trae Young, who's 6'1". Yeah, I have questions too about whether or not that guy is legitimately a player that I can win championship with. That doesn't sound like something that is like a crazy thought, but not something you should probably say in the press conference after the loss. So Danny Green, goes to the story. He's, oh yeah, and yeah, that was, and then Ben Simmons was really upset about that, and we were all trying to like find a way to get him to like say, hey, we're still part of the team. Like he said, we all tried to get on a private flight to LA. He told us, turn the flight around, don't come here. I'm not welcoming you guys. In terms of talking to him, and then he's like, yeah, I was in that practice when he got thrown out, and he had the cell phone in his pocket because we had that question like, he was playing the practice in sweatpants, which is not completely abnormal, but it can be seen as abnormal, and I think it was abnormal for him. And he obviously playing with his pants in his pocket, also was hands in his pocket, rather, also was obviously very unusual. But it looked like there was like some kind of device in his pocket, and we were trying to figure out what it was. And there were some people who said, "Hey, listen, and it was smart. People trying to shoot him bail, trying to shoot the whole situation bail. Hey, listen, like in NBA practices, like teams, they track guys and their effort level and how they're running and their conditioning and all those things and the steps they take. So like it could have been just a tracking device that he had in his pocket, and maybe he wasn't wearing it on his jersey or whatever. So a lot of people say, "Oh, there's no way it could have actually been a phone." And of course, Danny Green was like, "No, it was a phone." Yeah, he had a phone in his pocket. He tried to come out. Doc Rivers was trying to run a play or something, and he called Ben out, and Ben said, "Nah, I'm good." And he was like, "No, Ben, I need you to be the point guard here on this play. I want to show this thing." He said, "Nah, I'm good." So Doc was like, "All right, get the F out." So he kicked him out of practice. So it was a very funny story, and it's all on social media. It's easy to find. But I still have to say, like, that was a situation where, like, Ben Simmons definitely was sticking it to the Sixers for how they treated him. He did not like the fact that they blamed him for that loss. He did not like the fact, because the other thing Danny Green said was, did not like the fact that he was publicly dangled in trade rumors in the offseason, and he came in training camp and dogged it. That's what he did. So it's not an unreasonable thought to wonder if Karl Anthony Towns is doing that. It's unreasonable for him to actually do it, considering he's a pro, considering he's someone that should be above that, considering he has a chance to still win a championship with this team, and he might not actually get traded. But is it a thought process that is crazy to think that he could be sticking it to them? No. Because he is not played at the caliber level that is typical of someone like Karl Anthony Towns and what he has done in this league. So we got some, again, I mentioned earlier before the show, we got some kind of breaking news out of the NFL, and it was not head coaching news, but it was one of the more, most watched coaching searches for this entire carousel in the NFL, and it was who was going to be the Eagles' offensive coordinator. They kind of famously or infamously had to let go of Kevin Patullo in terms of his role as offensive play caller, because he was much maligned for the Eagles' offense for much of this season, and people had been calling for him to be fired. It felt like almost immediately. It felt like it was like middle of the season, early in the season. They were like, "This guy's in it. We gotta get this guy out of here." And he is not. He's still apparently maybe a member of the staff, but he's definitely not going to be the offensive coordinator anymore because they actually hired somebody new. Is Packers quarterback coach Sean Mannion, who you may remember Sean Mannion. He actually played in the NFL. He played for the Vikings. He started in NFL games. He played not that long ago. He was an active player in the NFL just as recently as 2023 with the Vikings and the Seahawks. He just became a coach in football for the first time in his life in 2024. He joined the Packers as an offensive assistant in 2024. I think he was like a pass game guy, coordinator or analyst, something like that. This past season, he was promoted to Packers QB coach. This was his first year as QB coach. And this is who the Eagles are hiring as their offensive coordinator. This seems a little stunning to me. I'll tell you why I think it's happening, but it's stunning to me just because the criticism the Eagles have had is when they've had coordinators who are not experienced in the role, they have struggled. When it was Ryan Johnson, who has been an offensive coordinator but not on the NFL level, after they won the Super Bowl when they had Shane Steichen, the offense fell off a cliff. The offense had struggles. And it was like you promoted a guy who wasn't ready to be offensive coordinator. You shouldn't have promoted in-house. Okay, fine. So then you go get Kellen Moore, a very seasoned play caller, and he did a great job for the Eagles last year, and they won a Super Bowl. But, of course, because he was a highly coveted coordinator, because he did a very good job, he won a championship, and he had been a guy that was talked about in the NFL circuit for a long time, Kellen Moore then goes hired by a team to be an NFL head coach for the New Orleans Saints. So then this year, instead of maybe trying to find another veteran coordinator, they went to someone in-house. They promoted Kevin Patullo, who was on the staff, who had been on the staff for a while. And that was a disaster. So you assume, given the pattern of experienced guy, rookie, experienced guy, rookie, you would think that, okay, well, this time they're going to try to find some kind of experienced offensive coordinator to be the guy who's going to call the plays. Nope. They go with someone who's only been a coach in football for 2 years. 2. And someone who's never been an offensive coordinator or offensive play caller before. In fact, he was on a team who head coach calls the plays. So even the Packers offensive coordinator doesn't call the plays. He wasn't even an offensive coordinator there. He was a QB coach. And this is going to be Sean Mannion's first go-around at being the play caller for the Eagles, I would assume. And this is going to get interesting. This is going to get interesting because I think if you play this, what is it? It's January 29th, 7:10 Eastern Time in New York City, where I'm recording. This hire could be the beginning of the end of Nick Sirianni. This hire could be the beginning of the end for Nick Sirianni. Because we already have this notion that this guy who came with an offensive background, we learned could not call plays and was not really useful when it came to offensive game planning for this team in a major way. So it became you're not a defensive guy, so what do you do around here thing. And it seems like he has said, well, I'm the CEO coach, I'm the people guy, I'm making sure everybody's on the right page, everyone's prepared and all those things. And they won a Super Bowl with him doing that. And they've been to 2. But has it looked like a team that's been super focused and buttoned up and never had issues? Like, it seems like this team always has issues. So if you're the guy who is supposed to mitigate distractions and mitigate concerns and keep everybody all on the same page, you won a championship, but it seems like it's been a rocky road for you even doing that. So now we get to this position where this was a highly viewed spot in terms of what was going to happen and highly scrutinized hiring for what was going to happen with the Eagles after the failure what happened to Kevin Patullo. How were they going to recover from that? And the best you can do is a guy who's been a coach for 2 years. Sean Mannion could have went in these interviews and he could have sounded like a football savant, and he may have views of the game that we just never could have foreseen. He could obviously be phenomenal. But it feels like the odds of that happening are a lot lower when you've not called plays in your entire life and you've just been a coach. Forget about just being a coordinator. You've only been a coach in the NFL for 2 years. And you were on a staff where you were nowhere near calling plays. And if you want to keep it a buck about where he was also on a staff that became embattled, where people looked at the play calling and looked at the offense and wondered if they were doing the right things, they were going in the right direction. That is, in terms of his coaching, now maybe he got stuff from when he was playing with the Vikings and the Seahawks and the other team he played with, but in terms of his coaching tree, that is all we have to go on, is these 2 years of Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur, it seems like, held onto his job by the skin of his teeth, given the performance that the Packers had offensively this season. That's the best they could have done with this? That's surprising. And I think that Philly is going to be, they're not a patient city already. This guy better be ready to go and their offense humming immediately. They're not going to give this guy an inch when it comes to any kind of grace of learning to get in this role. He's been coaching for 2 years. That's all he has is NFL experience. He was a coach for just 2 years. And this is an offense that, again, to me, there are talented players around it. But what we have seen from this offense, what we have learned from this offense in the last 4 years now, because we have a large sample size with this core, It's not an offense that you can just roll the ball out and say, just do him, cuz. I mentioned that earlier, how I felt like, or a couple weeks ago, how I felt like the Eagles offense was equivalent to what we talk about in basketball when you have a coach who doesn't seem to kind of run a lot of plays or run a lot of complicated sets. You just hand the ball to like your one-on-one guys and say, do him, cuz. Like, forget about picks and forget about crazy schemes and just do him, cuz. Like, go to work. To me, like, that's how I felt watching the Eagles offense too often. Is it just feels like it's you, A.J. Brown, stand there. You, Devontae Smith, stay there. We have a good running game, so they're playing man-to-man. Just run a good route, and I'm just going to throw it up to you. It doesn't feel like they do anything to actually scheme anybody open. So I say that that's important to me because I'm like, if you're going to hire a new offensive coordinator, I think I'd want someone who has a real experience being able to get guys open, to have multiple in their like thought processes and sets and using a lot more motion. Like, those are things I think this offense clearly needs. If it's the same, now A.J. Brown may be gone, there may be changes to the offense, but assuming it's most of the same cast, it can't be, well, we got a talented team, so we can kind of get anybody who kind of has a clue and they can figure it out. No, they needed very good offensive play callers to win a championship or get to the Super Bowl. Shane Steichen is a very good offensive play caller, and they got to the Super Bowl. Kellen Moore is a very good offensive play caller, and they won a championship. They could not get there with average guys or below average guys. We've seen that is not good enough. They need someone who's a lot more advanced. I don't think of advanced when I think of guys who have only been in the coaching profession for 2 years and who have never called plays. So I look at that and say, if this thing fails, if Sean Mannion's a bust and he ends up being a terrible hire as the head coach, as the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles, the head coach is going to wear this. The head coach is going to wear this, and they'll be another year removed from winning that championship. And as a team that's one of these kind of Super Bowl or bust teams every year, those guys are being held to a lot higher standard than any of these other coaches. So the Eagles could win 11 games next year, but if they fall short of expectations and the offense is still mid, and this is the best that Nick Sirianni could do, they're getting them out of there. And also the thing about this as well, because I don't want to necessarily just put Howie Roseman, just leave him off the hook. I think Howie Roseman has been left off the hook too often for these coordinator situations. He runs the entire show. We know that. We know how much influence he has. It's ridiculous that they haven't been able to get offensive coordinator in there that they can keep for a year. Like, he deserves some blame for that. He deserves some blame for that. And I know you can say, well, like, the guys that have been successful, you can't help the guys good. Okay, let's take that aside. But the fact that the two other hires you had to fire in a year, they were that bad, he does have to wear that. He has to. You want to say you can't blame him for guys being elevated to head coach because they were good at their job. Fine. He has to wear the fact that you had to fire two guys after 1 year. But again, he ain't gonna get fired. If this thing fails, Harry Roseman is not going to be the person that's going to be held accountable by Jeffrey Lurie. What? Are you serious? He's the best general manager in the NFL. He's one of the best executives in sports. He's not going anywhere. He is Teflon for a long time. It's going to take a while for him to wear out his welcome in that way, even in a city like Philadelphia. The head coach, who people already still question, who people already kind of wonder, what does he do around there? That guy can't afford another flop as an offensive coordinator, especially someone who is brand new at this. Because one of the successes that he had was convincing Vic Fangio to come to Philadelphia, not go to Miami, and be a defensive coordinator, in part because he was someone who was a experienced defensive play caller. It's worked on that side. It's worked on offense, having someone with experience. Now's the time where you decide, oh, you know what, now's the time, let's go a different route. That is dangerous to me. Treading on very dangerous waters for me, in my opinion, in terms of them deciding, you know what, let's go with someone who's only coached for 2 years as offensive play caller. Or as an offensive coach, not even play caller. Stunning to me. Sean Mannion, new offensive coordinator for the Eagles. We got a comment here, Matthew Graves. Would love to see if you can get Perloff on to get his opinion on the OC hire. It's a good idea. It's a good idea. Maybe I'll make a call tomorrow. That's the thing about this, is there's nothing stopping me from doing any of these things. We heard from Maggie this week. Now, I will say, and we did see this, obviously, so the only reason why I say this week might be challenging is because we did, obviously, Maggie mentioned it when she was on earlier this week, which was awesome to have Maggie on. Perloff, he's in Mobile. My guy, Andrew Perloff, hosted the Maggie and Perloff show, where I was executive producer for the last 2 years. he's in Mobile for the Senior Bowl. And he's there, he's talking to people, he's getting good content, like he's doing his thing. I was texting him, I was like, yo, say what's up to my guy, Ruben Bain. I thought Ruben Bain was still there. I know he wasn't participating because of the long playoff run that they had, and he decided not to participate. He had been scheduled to. I thought maybe he still showed up, maybe did interviews, or maybe just, was at practices or whatever. He turned up not showing up at all. It was like, oh, maybe you could have said what's up to my guy. I don't know Ruben Bain, but it's my guy because he's a all-time great Miami Hurricane now. But he's down there, so it may be tricky this week. It may be tricky tomorrow. I didn't want to, this happened right before the show, so I wasn't gonna get him on that quickly. But yeah, that might be the only trepidation. Like I think he's too busy, but I think next week he should have a lot more time. I think so. Maybe I give him a holler next week and see if we can get Pearl off one. Him and Maggie are at the top of the list of people I want to have on 40 Days and 40 Nights. I was very happy to have Maggie on. I wanted to have both of them on at the same time, but the Bills breaking news made it seem like, all right, this feels like a Maggie deal. I need to, get Maggie on for this. But this definitely would have been news that absolutely I'd have Perloff on. We definitely will have Perloff on sooner rather than later. That's for sure. Other thing Matthew says here in the chat here, this feels like something the Browns would have done. A coaching move that makes everyone go, huh? Totally agree. I saw this and I was like, is that the same Sean Mannion that was a football player? I thought he may have still been active in the league. I didn't even know he was coaching. Because it wasn't, again, he was a player in the 2023 season. We just finished the 2025 season. He's only 2 seasons removed from being in the NFL. I had no idea he had retired and decided to be. He's younger than me. I'm 34 years old. He's born in 1992. I was born in 91. He's younger than me. And here he, and look, and we have young coordinators, we have young head coaches. But those guys typically are guys who, they got into the coaching profession at 25. Like they just decided this is what they want to do and this is all they've done. So they're kind of wonderkins, but they've been in the cycle for a while. I'm not someone who's just going to say, oh, the fact that you played has zero impact on your ability to be valuable as a staffer on an NFL team. But offensive play caller is, I would argue, the second most important position besides head coach. I know defense people will be mad about that. They're one hand in hand. They're both 1A, 1B. In terms of what's behind head coach. Like, it's super important. You're going to give that to somebody that's only been coaching for 2 years? You don't really know how he deals with person. And then there's the aspect, again, like, forget about just, like, calling plays. There's also, like, personalities, dealing with quarterbacks, dealing with potential diva wide receivers. Like, these are things we have no idea how he manages that. None. He wasn't even, like, a star NFL player. So I said, well, I've had experience dealing with certain guys that played all these NFL games. He doesn't even have that. We have no clue with this guy. We only know, all we can go on is whatever he told Nick Sirianni in these interviews. I don't know what he could have told him, given he only had 2 years of experience, that made him say that this was the guy to hire as offensive play call for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations for what is the most scrutinized coordinator spot, maybe in the NFL. If this doesn't work out, man, Sirianni is absolutely going to wear it. You could look at this today, if this doesn't work out, and say this was the beginning of the end of Nick Sirianni. I want to get to this story, man. I mentioned before, I'm not someone who typically likes to talk about takes on takes. It's not something I really even thought about until I talked to Maggie and Pearl about it, and they kind of, just learning the game. And one of the great things I've enjoyed about being on that show was just learning about their philosophy on doing shows, learning their philosophy on just this industry. And again, apologies to them if I'm giving away free game that they wouldn't want to give out. But it's something that they talked about. Oh, you don't do a take on a take. It's kind of lame. And I was like, oh, never really thought about it that. Because I definitely, podcasts, shows I've done in the past, I definitely done takes on takes. And I understood why, right? It's like this idea that like you're kind of sending some people directly to the person that's giving these provocative thoughts. And if you're just reacting to them, then like, who are you? So I've kind of taken that ownership. Well, there's other reasons why that makes sense too, but that's one of the main reasons I thought about. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense in hindsight. And also I think it's important to challenge yourself when you're doing this. And I'm not someone who's I'm not chasing takes. I'm trying to see things I see and just give my honest opinion on them. And if I think they're important to talk about, then I do it. This is kind of why I landed on this one, because typically I wouldn't do a take on a take or someone's take on this thing unless there are some differences. Like if you're like a former player, which ironically this person is, but it's a little weird and a little complicated. We'll talk about that in a second. But like if you're a former player, if you're a former all-time great, like, and you happen to also be in the media, that becomes a little different, right? Because that's for someone who maybe is talking about experience that they dealt with. They're experts. It's a little different. It's not me, Nick Wright, and I'm not. This is not to diss Nick Wright or Nick Wright or Bomani Jones or Skip Bayless, like saying, "Oh, Skip Bayless said this. I'm going to talk about why that was dumb." Those people, they didn't play. They don't have. They can be experts. They can have analysis, but they don't have the player expertise. That's the kind of take I don't typically like to do. Especially because, again, we're all kind of in this game. We all know what we're trying to do here. I don't think it makes sense to jump on and dunk on people in that regard. So, with that being said, though, all that being said, I did think it was important to talk about this story from this commentary on Shedeur Sanders after the hiring of Todd Monken. He's a new head coach. He's the head coach. He's going to be, of course, I assume, the offensive play caller for the Cleveland Browns. And the Cleveland Browns, of course, have been a team that's gotten a lot of attention in large part because they have Shedeur Sanders on the team. Shedeur Sanders is someone who is a lightning rod. He is someone who's extremely polarizing. He is someone that comes with a lot of attention and a lot of eyeballs. And this past season was a roller coaster for reasons that were some of it on him. A lot of it just because of the attention he brings and people trying to take advantage of that and in many ways maybe exploit that. So he had this rookie year after this, I would consider, historic draft slide where someone who was slotted as a first-round pick. Because, we could talk about, he was never going to go top 10, whatever. That's fine. Go to almost all the mock drafts. Find me the ones where he's in the 5th round. Or find me the ones where he's not, at the very least, in the top 2 rounds. They don't exist. They do not exist. So what happened to him was completely stunning. And it's so funny when people do this history, being like, in the NFL circle, they told you that he wasn't that good. I'm like, I didn't see that. The NFL mock draft people are talking to NFL people. That's how they do the mock draft. That's how it works. At least towards the end. In the beginning, yeah, they're kind of doing it on their own. They're talking to some scouts or whatever, but a lot of it's just like they're just doing it on their own. But once you start to get an idea of what teams are doing, and you know who they're working out, and you're getting word on what these workouts are happening, how people are feeling about these players, you're talking to teams saying, hey, what do you think? And they're telling you this is what's going to happen. And that's how they're doing mock drafts. So I don't think they're one of these things that's like a nothing burger completely. Not towards the end of the draft process. Maybe in the beginning, not towards the end. So he has this historic draft slide, which allows him to become a 5th round pick, which means he's low man on the totem pole. In fact, he's the 2nd quarterback drafted on the team. There's another quarterback drafted ahead of him in Dylan Gabriel. But because he's a celebrity, because he has a lot of attention, he has a big following, everything about his rookie year was viewed under a microscope. And again, some things that seemed ridiculous and benign, like, the fact that he came in 4th string when there were other quarterbacks who were veterans. One guy won a Super Bowl, Joe Flacco, and there's a rookie ahead of him. That seemed like he should come in 4th string. There are other things regarding, things that, again, people taking out of context the whole Dylan Gabriel commentary during our preseason, halftime of a preseason game. Like, things that just were utterly ridiculous. But then there were things that were stuff that were self-inflicted. Like him speeding, which is dangerous, he shouldn't do that. Him pantomiming to respond to Rex Ryan. Like, why are you paying attention to what Rex Ryan's doing? Why are you responding in this way on a day where the guy you've been competing with has been announced as a starting quarterback? Just there's some aspects that he definitely can look back on and say, I should have handled this thing different. I could have handled this thing better. I think anybody who's fair would say that. But what has come with this is, again, because there are a lot of folks who are, I talked about, again, this idea that, I have this stance, I'm going to stay on this stance no matter what I see or what I hear, or like this stand culture idea, like, I'm standing Shedeur Sanders no matter what I see or what I hear. And what ends up happening is people start putting stuff out there in what they feel is support for him that I actually think could be extremely detrimental to this young man. And the only reason why I'm bringing this up is because of what happened to that Rex Ryan thing. Because I can go and say, well, who's to care what he hears on a podcast? Like he probably is not listening to that. He doesn't really care about that. And he doesn't really care about, like, what these, his fans and what people are saying about him. But we know he does. We know he does because he did the pantomiming thing to respond to Rex Ryan, saying that all he does is open his mouth. He doesn't shut up. He's talked about the fact that he has all these haters that are in his mention and all these haters that have been getting after him. He hears the noise. He's someone that, and it's okay to hear it, but like he responds to it. It actually informs how he moves about his day from time to time. That part of it is not good. You want to use that as fuel when you're on the practice field, when you're working out, when you're playing games, when you're trying to show you're the best, or whatever. That's totally fine. That's dude. With football players, like I always say, especially, do whatever you need to do that's not criminal to get yourself ready to go out there and get hit by 300-pound men. I could never do it. I never have any interest in doing it. You gotta be a crazy person to want to do it. So if that's what it's gonna take. If it's me giving you a tape that you hate and that idiot EJ Stewart, wait till I get on the field and whatever, fine. I don't care. Don't care. But to then say, oh, I'm gonna actually cause distractions. I'm actually gonna cause issues. I'm actually gonna, make this become part of my story in what it sometimes comes out as negative ways. That's when it's time for someone to say, hey, listen, don't listen to these guys. Don't listen to these people. And this is quotes from Emmanuel Acho from his podcast, Speakeasy. I don't want to play it, kind of because I think they're so ridiculous. I have to give the respect to just say who it was and where it came from. But I don't even want to play this now because it's so ridiculous. But I'm putting this out there because the way this is framed by someone who is a former NFL player, I know he didn't play very long, but he is a former NFL player, it is presented as advice for how Shedeur Sanders should approach his second year in the NFL. And I'm begging Shedeur Sanders to ignore everything this guy said. The quote here from Emmanuel Acho, which was based in this idea that Shedeur Sanders should not listen to new head coach Todd Monken because Monken is, quote, unproven as an NFL head coach. Acho said, quote, any expectation for Shedeur Sanders under Monken, I believe, will lead to disappointment. There is nothing about Todd Monken as a head coach that should get you excited. As an offensive coordinator, you can say Lamar Jackson had an MVP season under Todd Monken. As an offensive coordinator, Lamar Jackson had 41 touchdowns, 400 touches under Todd Monken. I hate that I'm even talking like now I regret not playing this out. Now I'm talking and sounding like Emmanuel Acho in his cadence, and that actually kind of makes me sick. But as an offensive coordinator, you could make the arguments for Todd Monken, Stetson Bennett, who won 2 national championships at Georgia under Todd Monken. But as a head coach, no, nothing. Nothing about Todd Monken as a head man gets me excited. I need to see who the offensive coordinator is going to be. That's what I need to see. Okay, that's a take. So, okay, I step back from that. So, okay, that's a take, your opinion. And there are people who aren't excited by Todd Monken. Okay, fine, take. Do I agree? I think it's kind of odd. But I'm not really into debating someone's takes. I could not care less. This is the part where I get concerned. If I'm Shedeur Sanders or anybody in that locker room, why am I listening to Todd Monken? What have you won on the NFL level as a head coach? You're not even a head coach on the NFL level. So I don't even have expectations for Shedeur under Todd Monken because I believe any expectations I would have, he would not meet. Because why am I excited about it? Shedeur Sanders. I don't do please to most athletes because you guys are athletes. I root for the Knicks, I root for my teams, but otherwise, like, do you? I'm just a guy. Shedeur Sanders. I'm begging you. Do not listen to anything that man just said. Completely ignore every single word that came out of that man's mouth. The reason why I feel it's important to talk about this is because, like I said, Shedeur, he really appreciates the love he gets from people and the support he gets from people. And again, he also keeps receipts of the negative and the people that are doubting and the people that are hating on him, quote unquote. He keeps all the receipts, especially from the famous folks, especially from the folks that have big microphones. I bring this up, and I hate to even bring it up, but I only bring it up just because I think it is important to kind of get into the mind of Shedeur Sanders. Like, it's very obvious we have a very polarizing president. I don't care what you think about the president, good or bad. I don't care. I'm only bringing it up because the president is a big fan of Shedeur Sanders. And, a lot of athletes have kind of tried to tiptoe around all politics in this era right now. But Shedeur Sanders, he was asked about, like, what is like to the president to affirm that in fact he didn't get drafted. He was so effusive about the president being another one of his fans. It wasn't even like he almost kind of didn't make it about like, oh, it's someone that at such a high stature. Like it was, he's on my team. He's a stand. Therefore, this is great. And it was kind of like, I hope he understands that like what comes with like embracing all that is the president of the United States and what he has represented, good or bad or indifferent. And it didn't seem like that was that consideration. But I think what he does care about is he does care deeply about his fans. He does care deeply about his supporters. And he does care about the people that actually do believe in him. That's how he is. So the fact that Acho was presenting this as advice is something that I think is problematic. It doesn't. Acho can do whatever he wants, but I'm saying just in terms of like for Shedeur and his future, it's problematic because he's someone that I think may actually listen to this. Like he's someone that may say, "Yeah, oh wait, you know what? Yeah, what has this guy proven? What has he done in the NFL? Why should I listen to him?" Because we got the stuff from Jamel Hill. However true it is or not, I don't know. But she said the people she has talked to who are Falcons fans do not like Kevin Stefanski purely because of how he treated Shedeur Sanders. I don't even know what that means. Like, what was his treatment of him? I don't even know. I still don't know what that means. But the fact that that even is a statement, I'm like, he drafted him. Okay, he started in the fourth string, but like he wasn't going to start above the guys ahead of him to start out at practice. He played a lot down the stretch. Should he have gone to him earlier? Maybe. Should he have when he played well in that first preseason game? Should he have elevated him in the depth chart? These are debatable things. Maybe I didn't look at this Shedeur Sanders in terms of how he was quote unquote treated by his head coach and thought he was being like he was making him run suicides after every practice. I didn't know what they were even talking about. But when you get into these echo chambers, and that's what these fans for Shedeur Sanders and anybody who's on social media, because that's all it is. It's information that's being fed to you to make you feel a strong way. So if you feel strongly about Shedeur Sanders and you keep clicking on content about Shedeur Sanders, you're going to keep getting that content about Shedeur Sanders. So you're in this echo chamber of people talking about how everyone's trying to sabotage him. Cam Newton saying he's trying to be sabotaged by Kevin Stefanski. You start to believe this stuff, even if like there's real evidence to step back and say, okay, is that really what's going on? And that when that's all you're being fed, you tend to take it as fact. You take it as that's the only explanation for what's going on. And again, Shedeur is in that echo chamber. That's why this is important. It'd be one thing if he's like, I'm not on social media, I don't turn on my phone, I don't care about that stuff, I just play football. He is not that. That's not the kind of athlete he is. It's not the kind of public figure he is. He is also in those echo chambers. He hears all this stuff. He probably saw this Acho thing before I did. So, as someone who is a prominent commentator and someone who is a former football player who's saying he should not listen to his coach, someone needs to come out and say, and I'm glad a lot of folks have, he should not listen to that. That is terrible advice. And in many ways, it will continue to prop up a lot of the narratives that he says are false narratives about him. And I think it's fair to believe that there are false narratives about him. That he is this entitled guy. Nothing screams entitlement than a fifth-round pick who, in his first season as an NFL quarterback, had an 18 QB rating in front of his QBR, saying, I'm not listening to my new head coach. Because what the hell has that guy done? And then, like, the reasoning being, well, yes, he did get Lamar Jackson his second MVP and hadn't had two of the best seasons any quarterback has ever had. Literally, that was also part of this thing, but he didn't do it as a head coach. He didn't do it as a head coach. So therefore, it doesn't matter. Therefore, that guy has no value to me. Forget that this offensive play caller, who yes is your head coach, but will also be now your new offensive play caller, just helped Lamar Jackson go from being a very good to great quarterback to all-time great quarterback in the 2 years that he coached him prior to this year with the injuries. He put together two of the best seasons any quarterback has ever had. Forget about that. That doesn't matter. Because he was a coordinator during that time and now he's a head coach, so now it's different. And we don't know if he's a leader of men or not. And that's really that matters. So you just shouldn't listen to him. You shouldn't even give him a chance. Why would I even give this guy a chance based on his experience because he hasn't been a head coach? It's mind-numbingly idiotic. Mind-numbingly idiotic. And I think it's really important for these folks who are Shedeur Sanders fans or Shedeur Sanders supporters, when you're putting stuff out there understand that when you put stuff out there like that, it's stuff that he listens to, I believe. And when you push him to a status that he has not earned, Shedeur Sanders, there's nothing he has done in his career that would warrant him not giving Todd Monken a chance. There's nothing he's done in his career that would warrant him not allowing Todd Monken to coach him. He's a 5th round pick. His best season in Colorado, he won 9 games. I know he threw a ton of yards, a ton of touchdowns, but they won 9 games. He was not part of the Heisman conversation. He didn't win a national championship. He didn't even win a conference championship. He was a 5th round pick. He was 4th string just last year. He doesn't have this carte blanche and this status that you keep giving him, that you keep feeding into him. And if there really are concerns that he does need to learn some humility, and he does need to learn about lack of entitlement, this is not the advice to give him. This is the opposite. If you're saying that this thing has been unfair to him, it's been unfair that this idea that he's been labeled as this entitled guy has been unfair to him, why the hell would you tell him to not listen to his head coach after he just got hired off of putting together 2 of the best seasons of Lamar Jackson's career? What does that sound like? That sounds like entitlement. It sounds like somebody who lacks humility. You're telling him to be the exact person that got him into this position, that got him to have the legion of haters that you keep saying that he has, that don't want to see him succeed. You are being just as destructive in terms of giving him advice and in his process of trying to become a great NFL quarterback as these people that you claim to hate who keep hating on him. Do not tell him this crap. Do not put this out into the ether. Not for the sake of a damn take. Not for the sake of some views. That's corny, man. That's whack. Like, again, if this was just some random take, I wouldn't care. Get your engagement, get your money, get your whatever. I'm not trying to get in anybody's pockets. I firmly believe that. That's how I feel. If you say something offensive, if you say something whatever, I will stand for what I believe in, and I will stand up for what I think is right, and I'll maybe counter that. But otherwise, you have a take, I could think it's insane. Most of the time, you've now seen me do, this is show 28. It's crazy to say that. This night 14, I've done 28 shows. How many times have I done takes on takes? I don't do this. This one I felt was important. Because I'm like, again, these folks who are going out there and putting these commentary out there and what they think is support of Shedeur Sanders could actually be influencing him to make the kind of moves that allow him to be a 5th round pick. That have the people in the NFL doubting him the way they doubted him. That took money out of this kid's pocket. Because think about the millions of dollars he could have got if he would have been the 1st round pick he should have been. Or at worst, a day 2 pick. The guy's a 5th round pick. He's making like and I don't mean to make this small money, but it's small money in the NFL. He's making like $1 million a year. Maybe less. You took tens of millions of dollars from this kid's pocket by potentially inflating his head to a level that his game, the NFL believed, didn't match. And now you're doing it again. You're doing the same thing. To sit there and tell a 2nd-year quarterback who had an 18 QBR rating in his first year that you shouldn't listen to a guy who, I don't know, coached a MVP quarterback is ridiculous and insane. And I'm saying this because Shedeur Sanders, you need to understand how ridiculous insane this is. And you need to understand that these folks who are putting this kind of content out there aren't out there looking for your best interest. They're out there to get engagement and get clicks. That's why they're doing this stuff. That's why they're saying this stuff. And and Acho can paint it as well, I'm doing this because I want to give him advice. This is my advice for Shedeur Sanders. But we know why he did this. Look at I don't want to send you to the tweet, but if you want to, whatever. It doesn't matter at this point. We're all slaves to the algorithm. Go to the tweet. Look at all the views that video got. Look at all the likes. Look at all the commentary. Most of it's people saying you're a dummy, but it don't matter. In this digital world that we live in, it doesn't matter that everyone's saying you're a dummy. You got the clicks, you got the views, you got the comments. That's all that matters. So he won. And guess what? Shedeur Sanders could listen to this advice, be uncoachable, become a bust, and never have a good NFL career, and that's not going to affect Emmanuel Acho's bottom line 1 inch. Not 1 iota. It's not going to matter at all. All that matters is the take for that day. He got through this day. That's all that matters to him. For Shedeur, today is just 1 day. You got what I'm hoping to be a long NFL career. And a lot of people who are supporting you, who are rooting for you, hope to be a long NFL career. Whether it's advice from the likes of a Emmanuel Acho, don't listen to your head coach, or on the flip side, hate from people like Rex Ryan, who are also same thing. He's doing a job to get engagement, to get creative commentary, to get people to watch. Those are not the folks to take your ownership from in terms of how you actually move with the Cleveland Browns. I watched you take Rex Ryan commentary that was utterly ridiculous and actually apply it to how you were doing your job. Guess what? Talking to the media is part of your job. It's part of the job description. You created a massive distraction during a time that the last thing the backup quarterback needed to do was be a distraction. And somehow he was. Because that's something Rex Ryan said. So that's why I thought that was important to talk about, man. I really hope he does not take that advice. Do not listen to anything that guy said. It was completely idiotic. It was completely stupid. It doesn't matter that it's idiotic or stupid because all it matters is about getting reaction, which is what it's going to get out of people. It cannot get the reaction out of you. It cannot be a reaction that you take into your job, that you take into your career, that you take into your craft. It cannot. And I hope he takes that advice. That's absolutely free game for me. I mean, I root for his success just because I just root for most people's success. I'm not a Shedeur fan. I'm not a Shedeur hater. I'm just a guy. But, I mean, I'm seeing this. I'm like, I saw how destructive some of the things that people were saying about him that I think that inflated his head cost him in the NFL draft. He has what I think could be a good opportunity. Am I super high on Todd Monken as a head coach? Not really. I do like him as a guy that developed young quarterbacks. I do think you could learn a lot from him. Because, Lamar Jackson, who was an MVP already, learned a lot from Todd Monken. If Lamar Jackson could learn from Todd Monken as an MVP quarterback already, a star quarterback already, why can't a 5th-round pick who had a 19 QBR last year not learn from Todd Monken? And that's the advice you're giving him. Man, come on. That's weak. In the chat, Matthew Graves actually wants to defend Acho. It says here, his take is fair, but to preface it by saying Shedeur Sanders should ignore him, that's ridiculous and lessens any argument he may have had. Yeah, so I kind of have in the first half, not gonna lie. Yeah, I see what you're saying. And like, I think it's wrong, but like I said, any people, I don't care what your take is. Newsflash to these folks out there. I will never care about what your take is. I don't. I mean, now if we're in a show together, if we're doing commentary together, and you commenters, I always care what your takes are. I want to have that back and forth. I'm talking about just anybody doing a podcast, doing a show, like, you know. And I wasn't always like that. I feel like that's like, and I was talking to Andrea about this actually earlier, my fiance. Like, that's like actually growth for me as like a media consumer and just as a fan, and not just of sports, of all things. I was like, wait, why do I care what this person thinks? It doesn't really matter. I know what I think, and that's all that cares. The people that I like and I agree with, and that people that I think are smart, yeah, I want to hear what they have to say on certain things. But like just some rando that I don't have any affiliation to or any affinity to, why am I getting upset about something they said? About something that has nothing to do with me? So that's just growth from my personal side. So in that standpoint, yeah, like if he feels like Todd Monken is not someone that excites him, even though he coached an MVP quarterback, even though he had all of this success as a coach at Georgia because he was a coordinator, I don't quite understand it, but that's his opinion. I'm not here to argue that opinion. I don't care about that opinion. What I care about is here's some game for you, fam. Don't listen to that guy. No, that is not what you want to do. That is not what we want to see happen. You do need to listen to your coach if you're going to be a successful NFL player. Whether that guy's a buster or whether that guy is the next Vince Lombardi. Because you already have this thing on your ledger that you're entitled, that you're uncoachable. The last thing you need to be doing is coming into a second year of your NFL career with your, with very little NFL experience, the little you played was not all that impressive, saying I'm not listening to my coach. That's literally the last thing you could do. That would be detrimental to your career. That would be the last thing I would suggest. So no, please don't do that. We also got another comment here from my guy Rod DeRay. Browns don't need Sam Acho's help to be a dysfunctional clown show. To be clear, this was Emmanuel. Now I'm not sure if you're just confusing the guys' names on purpose. This is Emmanuel Acho. This is not Sam Acho. I don't want to put any disrespect on Sam Acho's name. Sam Acho, to be honest, Sam Acho, he doesn't seem to really cause many issues. He seems to kind of just, I like college football. Here's what I think they'll win national title. That's kind of all I have to say. He's not trying to be provocative. He's not trying, it seems like, to upset the apple cart anyway. So I definitely don't want to put any stain on Sam Acho's name. It seems like he just goes about his normal day as a college football analyst and kind of minds his business. His brother seems to be out here just trying to say and do anything. But to be fair, yeah, that's 100% right. The Browns are already a clown show, and it's a perfect opportunity, a perfect chance that this does not work out for the Browns, because they may have just identified a guy who was not a good head coach. They might have identified a guy who was the wrong hire, because guess what? They hired the wrong guy 90% of the time. Think about their history since they returned to the NFL. They've had bad coach after bad coach after bad coach. Tom Monken absolutely could be one of the next guys. It's also a reality that they're a bad run organization, so you may have had coaches that may have been able to be successful, but they couldn't be successful in that situation. And that's a reality too. Tom Monken could also be going to a no-win situation, which if you consider the team that they have and the offense that they have and how much behind the eight ball they are in terms of putting together a actual credible offense, yeah, he's behind the eight ball too. So there's a perfect idea that this might end up being a disaster for them. But yes, they don't. They could be the functional on their own. They don't need Sam Acho, Emmanuel Acho, whatever Emmanuel Acho's relatives' names are. They don't need any Achos to help them be as awful as they've been. Rob also saying here in the chat here, as I drop that one down, put this one up. Rob saying, "My bad, it's bedtime for the kid. You got half a year." So he's dealing with a young infant, so that will take your time. I totally understand that. Shout out to my guy Rob the Ray. Bob Custer in the chat saying, first of all, actually I'll go back before I make this, before I put this up there. But Bob Custer saying, great points on Todd, EJ. Thank you for that, Bob. Like I say, I always keep it 100. And he also says, yes, hearing ongoing criticism is part of expressing opinions as a host, in my opinion. The Browns do have a long history of making bad moves. Yeah, I mean, that's I hear what you're saying. Yeah, especially hearing ongoing criticism is part of expressing opinions as a host. Yeah, and I totally get that, and I try to pick my spots when it comes to, am I going to comment on what some other guy said? I could speak to narratives. I always would speak to narratives about, oh, this is what these people are saying about this thing, and I don't agree. That's one thing, but like taking an individual guy, or a woman or whoever, and that's not really usually my game. That's just a reality. But like, yeah, like it's the Browns. They do have a long-term history of making bad moves, but the rationale for why this is a bad move, that the quarterback who is a fifth-round pick should not even give the coach a chance, should not listen to him, to come in skeptical of like, why should I listen to this guy? That to me is it's utterly ridiculous, because again, even if he is terrible, he can end up being a terrible head coach. The last thing Shedeur Sanders needs to do is have another person make the case that he is uncoachable. Have another person make the case that he is someone that is entitled. Because whether you think that Acho is right or not, that is entitlement. It's entitlement. Like sometimes, like, yes, there are things that like come with negative connotations, but there's also just like definitions and facts. Like that's the definition of being entitled. Like feeling like you're not owed. You're not owed someone's time because of their background. That's literally entitlement. You may be entitled to that opinion. Like we always say, oh, you're entitled to think that. Like that. Some words we there's a connotation that they're negative. They don't necessarily have to be negative. It's like someone mentioned earlier, like someone mentioned the thing of like propaganda. I saw someone make this commentary like, oh, we hear the word propaganda. I know it's gonna sound scary. I promise I'm not take you down some scary lane. But someone made the point that you hear the word propaganda, you think automatically it's a negative word. How you use it and how it's mostly applied is negative. But just propaganda in itself isn't negative. It's just a thing. It's just a thing that is just an action. Propaganda, you could be propagandizing people to love their children. That's not negative. There's nothing negative about. There's no aspect of anybody being negative of you loving your child, right? But you could use propaganda to try to get that message across. So when I say the word entitlement, like that's the definition of entitlement. Like to say whether he's right or wrong, he should not listen to his head coach. He should be skeptical of his head coach off rip as a fifth round pick because the guy didn't coach before in the NFL as a head coach. That's the definition of entitlement, and that's what people have called Shedeur Sanders, and they've used it in a negative way. So if you want to continue that negative narrative, you're going to play right into the definition of the word entitlement. You're giving it right to them. And finally, Matthew Graves, I'm sorry, said, sorry, I'm not defending Acho. Yeah, I realized that when I kind of read it again. My bad on that too. I'm agreeing with you. He can have his take, but giving that, quote, advice and lesson, whatever his point is, because in what universe is ignore your head coach good advice? I'm not sure if that's good advice for like almost any player. Like, have there been some examples where that has made sense? Like, I remember like there was a play LeBron when he was with the Cavs. This was the first year with David Blatt. They were playing the Bulls in a conference semifinals, and David Blatt drew up a play in a pivotal game. It might have been like, I think it was like game 4, and they might have been down in the series. It was a big play. He drew up a play. I do not remember who it was for, but it was not for LeBron. And the stories have gone and saying that LeBron basically said, we're not doing that. I'm going to stand here. I'm knock this guy off. Give me the ball. I'm hitting the shot. And he had a game winner, and they won this, and they ended up winning the series. It was a massive play. And then they went, oh, what was the play call? And then we then learned, well, there essentially was no play call. LeBron said, we're not listening to the coach. We're ignoring his advice because I need the ball here, and I know what I'm doing. There are small examples where you can say, oh, yes, maybe ignoring your coach is a good idea. Like, he's LeBron James, and that was David Blatt. So that's one scenario. This is not David Blatt and LeBron James. Shedeur Sanders and Todd Monken, this is not even in the same stratosphere of what we're talking about here. And that's just a particular moment. It wasn't LeBron coming in to say, I'm not listening to the coach ever at all. They did have their issues, and it did seem like there are times where LeBron wasn't the most coachable, but he's LeBron James, which is, again, part of my issue with all this. We're treating Shedeur Sanders' stardom and his celebrity as if he's an actual NFL star, and you're inflating what his impact is as a pro and who he is as a player at this point in his career. He's not that. He's not. So don't paint stuff like that as a vice, because he may listen. And I don't know I have no idea what Acho's intentions are. I'm not even going to pretend to. I know he wants to get clicks. But outside of that, I don't know what his intentions are. I'm not going to sit here and say he isn't trying to give him advice. I'm not going to say that he is trying to give advice. I don't know. I just know what he said. But I'm saying, if you are a supporter, if you are someone who is actually saying, I'm looking out for the best for Shedeur Sanders, stop inflating his head with things that are completely nonsensical and are only going to feed into the negative narratives about him. It's only going to hurt his career. We're going to keep it moving here. A couple more things I want to get to. Big story here. I'm actually curious to get one guy's take in here. Before I even move on, I want to get my guy Jarv on here. Ray Jarvis, who of course has been on the show before, he will be back. He will be back. We've already talked about it. He will be back. I don't know when. We do have a big album coming out next week. Maybe next week. We'll see. Who knows? But nonetheless, we'll have Ray on here. He did a great job coming on. He came in. We talked hip-hop. He's, of course, a co-host of the Rap Roundtable, but he also knows sports. He works at the Fan. Saying, hey, Shedeur is just so polarizing that people find new and unique ways to say ridiculous things about him. That's fair. That is fair. That's a very fair way to put it. He is extremely polarizing, and it's just like idea where it's like, if you are on his side, you think that if somebody's out to get him, and there's some boogeyman around the corner that's going to ruin his career. And on the surface, I don't see why you wouldn't look at Todd Monken and say, for Shedeur. Now, for the Browns, I have a lot of concerns. For Shedeur, I look at it and say, okay, he can learn something from that guy. Is it going to be successful? Is it going to work out in terms of him being a good quarterback there or being successful there? I don't know. Todd Monken may just also not like him. Like, that's a reality. Like, Gabriel's going to deal with the same thing, right? He didn't draft either of these guys, so he's going to come in. Now, to be fair, something of note that I didn't think about it just now. Who are the two teams besides the Browns that wanted to draft Shedeur Sanders he said no to? Eagles. Ravens. OC with the Ravens was Todd Monken. Now, could this have been Eric DeCosta or John Harbaugh call or even a Steve Bisciotti call where they are saying, hey, I want Shedeur Sanders? I don't know. I would assume that if you're going to bring in someone like Shedeur Sanders, you want to get the advice of the offensive coordinator of your team, considering you might have to play him at some point. And I also would then assume that the offensive play call will say, I think he could be something. So there's actually evidence to suggest that this may be really good for him. He may have found a coach that actually believes in him. He may have found one of the few coaches that did believe in him in this past draft, apparently. That's a possibility given real life evidence, facts that we know. Not hot take nonsense about, well, what has he done as an NFL coach? I don't listen to him. That guy may actually really like Shedeur Sanders. In fact, there's evidence to suggest that he does. So yeah, it absolutely is a great point in terms of just like the perspective and how people approach it. You know, Ray always doing a great job whenever he's doing anything he's doing. So shout out to him. He's the guy. He's the man. I want to keep it moving here. This is a topic if Ray is still in the chat. I'm sure he could be very invested in. What's going on with J. Cole and Drake? So and let me say this. We actually are going to talk music in this segment too. I know they're supposed to be like, oh, now you're going to do the same thing, right? You're just going to talk about beef and talk about drama and whatever. And you guys are so annoying, man. So annoying. You can't talk about anything about someone complaining about your view or like just shut up. This is important. This is newsworthy. This, whatever this dynamic is between Kendrick Lamar, Drake, and J. Cole, the three biggest rappers of their generation. It's big news. Sorry if you were tired of hearing about it. It's interesting. And I didn't bring somebody nowhere. This is something that someone said who is close to Drake, who's giving us this information. So I'm already jumping out the window of people who will probably yell at me about this. But I just had to get that out of the way. So anyway, again, speaking about, takes on takes and things like that, I'm bringing this up again because it is newsworthy. I think it's important because of who it's coming from. So we have this J. Cole album coming out next week, Fall Off, February 6th. And there's a lot of excitement for it. We just got this mixtape, Birthday Blizzard, which we talked about a couple days ago, or yesterday, whenever we talked about it. And we talked about, man, it sounds like Cole is taking shots at people. And yes, we talked about how great the music is. Yes, we talked about how great his rapping is. Yes, I talked about how much I really enjoyed the music and how much I loved it. We did all that. It wasn't all about drama. But it was undeniable to look at this and say, he's rapping about things that I feel like could apply to someone that is being critical about Drake. Or Kendrick Lamar. It actually was kind of unclear. Because he was saying things where it was like, these could apply to either of these gentlemen. By the way, there were other people who seemed to get shots. Joey Badass seemed to get shots. Young Simba seemed to get shots. It seemed like there were people who also had got shots from J. Cole on this mixtape. I love Joey Badass, but when you're talking about the biggest of artists right now in these conversations, if we're talking about Kendrick Lamar and Drake, that's where we're going to shift the focus in terms of like those bars and who those are revealed for. I said on this podcast, in this live stream, I really had no idea. I couldn't decipher one way or the other who he was shooting at. I thought there were arguments to be made that he was shooting at both of them, which is still true, maybe. But I could not, but there was also a possibility that all the shots were labeled for just Kendrick, or all the shots were just labeled for Drake. It was very funny watching the fan bases of both Kendrick Lamar and Drake, who say they don't care about Cole, they don't have a thing for Cole, and both fans don't really particularly have a lot of love for J. Cole in terms of the fans that are like the stands, right? Like, I'm a Kendrick Lamar fan, and I love J. Cole, obviously. And there are plenty of other hip hop fans who are fans of all three of these gentlemen still. But the people who are like, I'm a J. Cole stan, I'm a Kendrick Lamar stan, I'm a Drake stan, those folks, those people in those hives, the best way to put it, the Kendrick hive and the Drake hive, who neither of them rock with J. Cole because of his stance on how he handled this, whether it's the Kendrick stance being like, see, that's why this guy was never on our level, you guys were idiots for saying he was on our level, and he should have never hung out with Aubrey, he should have never done all the stuff he was doing, so they don't like J. Cole. And then the Drake people being like, you shouldn't have bowed out of the rap battle, like he was rapping at both of us, he said crazy stuff about both of us, there were all these issues, so he's getting it from both sides. And it was funny seeing them, who they claim that, like, oh, J. Cole's not no big three no more, and oh, he's not on that level no more. They all seem very concerned about whether or not J. Cole was shooting at their guy. Again, I say, why are they concerned? If he's not big three, if he's not all that good, if he lost his spot, why are you concerned if he's shooting at him or not? Again, you ponder on that. But anyway, it was truly, to be fair, like a whodunit. I could not decipher who was the person and what was going on. But we got some interesting details today. And it comes from the new Rory and Mal show. Shout out to Rory, shout out to Mal. And it's not a take, this is like details, this is information. That's why I'm bringing it to you guys. And Mal, who he's very clearly very close to Drake. He kind of appears to be like a Drake stan. He definitely is in that kind of place, and that's been his role on this show and just as a media figure over the last few years for sure. Mal talks to Drake. There's obviously some kind of relationship. He revealed something after they did their review on this mixtape. He revealed something that we did not know. And I think it paints the Birthday Blizzard in a new light. I think it paints what J. Cole said about his new album cover in a new light. It paints a lot of things in a new light. Here's what Mal said about J. Cole after listening to him on Birthday Blizzard.
He better explain why he did what he did. He better explain why he had that conversation with Kendrick. Okay. And then never spoke to Drake after that again in his life. He has to explain that. I'm with you. He has to explain that. That's nasty. I fuck with Cole. Cole can rap his ass off. Put it in bars on why you did what you did to Drake, bro. Don't give me all of this young Simba and this nigga and that. No. Tell the world why you had that conversation with Kendrick before that whole back and forth with him and Drake, and why you came off that tour with Drake, and after Drake gave you your first #1, and then you never spoke to Drake again. Okay. Current day, today, till this day, has never spoke to Drake again.
And apologies for language, like I said before. I'm doing a lot on the show. I'm not gonna go crazy about trying to bleep out every curse. So apologies for some language there. If you had some kids around and you didn't want to hear that language around the kids, apologies for that. But just on the surface of that commentary, he's not spoken to Drake this whole time. Not one conversation. So the way Mal puts it, and like there was a long conversation. He's saying this is facts. Put it out there because they're asking, do you want this out there? Is this on the record? He's like, yes. So if I'm supposed to understand this correctly, J. Cole, Kendrick has this, he sends those shots that he does on like that. J. Cole, with all this idea of what was he going to do, how was he going to respond. He throws out 7-minute drill. It's not received that well. He is not happy with it for various different reasons. It's that his heart wasn't in it, and he also loves Kendrick Lamar, he says, so he didn't want to really diss him. So he rescinds it, and he apologizes on the stage. What we know from the situation before we heard from just Mal was that there was some kind of call that may have happened right before Dreamville Fest, maybe right before he went on stage, between Cole and Kendrick, maybe Cole and Schoolboy Q. There's been kind of different stories of who exactly from the TDE, PG Lang camp he was talking to, but he was talking to the West Coast side, that side. And there was conversations that were had, and there was this really long conversation apparently. And then J. Cole went on stage and had this crazy apology. I'm calling it crazy. That's my opinion. I know some people say, oh, he did the right thing. I think it was crazy. from that, that's all we knew from this. Then, like, J. Cole just didn't really say anything. He was just kind of quiet, and that was it. And then we saw the rap battle happen, how it happened, and then that was the end of it. The only other reference we've had from Cole about any of this prior to Birthday Blizzard was Port Antonio, where he's effusive about his love for Drake and his appreciation of Drake. That was towards the end of 2024, same year this whole beef started. And I almost want to bring up the rap lyrics just so I can make it very clear just how effusive he was and why this is very odd, if this is true. And I'm not even denying that it's true. Like, I'm not even saying, all right, there's definitely reasons to be skeptical of anything Maul says regarding Drake, because that's someone he's very close to and he supports, it seems like, no matter what. But there are words that were said here that make it seem kind of obvious that something weird is going on here. So again, this was about the beef during the time in 2024. He says, when they'll text me, I'll share the words he said to me. If you refuse to shoot the gun, that don't mean the gun ain't deadly. I guess in the metaphor, hypothetically, the gun is me. I text him back. I guess a gun ain't what I'm trying to be. And like that was him talking about like him bowing out of the rap battle. And then he goes and continues. They stripped me of my spot, and now I'm finally free. They say I'm picking sides. Don't lie on me. Then start another war. Hey, Drake, you always be my end. I ain't ashamed to say that you did a lot for me, my end. F all the narratives. Drake, you always be my end. You did all this stuff for me, my end. Like, he's saying here, like, oh, I got all this love for Drake. No matter what you guys think about people choosing sides, I got love for Drake. But you haven't spoken to him? You haven't really called and said, hey, I know I was kind of neutral during this thing. How you doing, buddy? Are you doing okay? Like, how you feel about all this? Not one conversation. I'm not here to judge Cole for doing that because I don't know why he did that. Mo is judging because he loves Drake and whatever. That's not my energy. I'm not judging him. I just think it's important to know and it's interesting. And why did you not talk to him? Because before that, to Maul's credit, and it's not so much in the chat, but like, yeah, like you had this huge record. I hate calling songs record, but that's what they say on that show all the time. You had this huge song, first person shooter. It wasn't number one. It was your first number one. You went on tour, and it was a tour I was trying to get to. I wasn't able to get to, unfortunately. And you actually, it seemed like Drake, it was out of nowhere. Like, it seemed like Drake really wrapped her arms around you, and you wrapped your arms around him. And it was bizarre because there seemed to be so many years where there are plenty of fans of Drake and J. Cole who, like, because they have been friendly in the past, and one of J. Cole's first huge songs was In the Morning with him and Drake, people wanting, oh, like, when those guys will eventually do music together, or like when, like, those guys don't hang out much, like, it would like nice to see them together at some point. Now, some of it's just like, oh, it is rap, it is competition, and, it's like 1 and 3, or 2 and 3, or 2 and 1, or however, like, these are top guys. It's not like these guys are just going to be collaborating every album. In some ways, they're trying to compete against each other. So it wasn't something that I was obsessed with, but it was something people thought about because they both always said very nice things about each other. But there wasn't this pound around, you're my guy kind of relationship. So it made people wonder, is something up there or anything, but it didn't seem like it. Then I know where J. Cole's always hanging out with this guy. And J. Cole is not someone who comes outside. He is someone who infamously is like, I make my music and then I just go back to being a dad or trying to play basketball professionally. I'm not out here riding with people in whips and taking pictures and doing. That's not him. That's Drake. Drake is famously very outside. That's not J. Cole. So it was, as a J. Cole fan who follows him very closely, it was very odd to see these moves being like, okay. Also, like, the positive feelings a lot of J. Cole fans have about Drake had definitely also dissipated by that point in time. So it's kind of like, really? We're doing this now? Okay. I would have liked to see you guys hanging out maybe 5 years ago when Drake was still making great music. He wasn't being a weirdo. And now, all right, whatever. But it's cool, and you guys may make a great song, and they did, and they made great music together, and they did. So we all thought we won in the end. So all that happens, and you don't speak to him at all. Now, to be fair, we don't know what conversation happened, if there were any more conversations after the conversation with Kendrick. That might have been the last time you ever spoke to Kendrick ever, too, to be fair. But it's noteworthy, considering you talked about how, I'm not ashamed about how much I appreciate Drake and how Drake is always going to be my guy, but I have not picked up the phone from him as he's having one of the most tumultuous times of his professional career. And after you've just been hanging out nonstop, not nonstop's harsh, but you've been hanging out a lot and doing a lot together. It is strange. It's strange. There could be a reason. And maybe this is me being now my bias coming in. With Drake, there could be a very good reason why you don't want to hang out with a guy that much anymore. I would understand it. I'm not even here to really judge. Off the rip, though, it is weird. So that go back to those bars that we heard on Birthday Bills of 26. And if I'm keeping it 100, I'm being real. I now, there could still be some shots at Kendrick in there. I don't know. I think a lot of those shots are at Drake. I think the stuff about Lucian. I think stuff about I write my rhymes. And if you think about some of the rapping in the beef, remember, Cole apologized and bowed out. If you think of some of the bars, that were thrown out there, that included Cole. Cole, in Euphoria, when it comes to Kendrick's, talking about Cole, he's saying, you did Cole foul. You did J. Cole foul with how you moved. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means, hey, putting you in a position to write rhymes and put it in songs and put slick shots at Kendrick. Considering he's my friend and what you did to put him in that spot and what that was going to mean, because I hate you and I can't stand you. And if he's going to be with you, then it's war. You did him foul because Cole didn't want that. That's me just speculating. That's me thinking maybe that's what's going on. I have no idea. There's that. There can be something behind the scenes that we don't know about. Because there's this innuendo from people who do this and talk about hip hop that there's something about how Drake's moved behind the scenes that a lot of people aren't liking. We've heard it from Metro Boomin. We've heard it from Rick Ross. We've heard it from not too many names. There's too many names of people being like, I'm not gonna get into what's going on, but that guy is not moving the way I like. So it could be something that J. Cole, he hung out with him because he was like, oh, I haven't hung out with this guy in years, and now he wants to hang out. Okay, cool, let's hang out. And then maybe people were saying, yo, Drake is doing X, Y, and Z. He's a menace. And he's like, oh, snap. I didn't know he was a menace. I didn't know you guys all hated him this bad. I didn't know he did all this to you. My bad. I'm going to distance myself. These are all possibilities, but these are things that we don't know. And I would like to hear it. I would. Maul says he owes it to fans. I don't know if he owes it, but it is interesting. I don't know why he wouldn't be on speaking terms with Drake. I guess in theory it's a two-way street. Drake could always call him. So there's that aspect of it, and that's where it gets a little third grade. Oh, he did all this for you, and you didn't. Now you're not speaking to him ever again. It does sound a little, and I don't mean to sound like Maul sounds like that, but it just the way it was kind of presented, it did come across a little elementary. And I'm like, these are grown men. Okay, he's not talking to them, whatever. But just from a rap standpoint, it is interesting. From a personal standpoint, I don't really care if he's not talking to Drake anymore. That doesn't move me in any way. I'm glad he's not talking to Drake anymore. I don't like how Drake's moved in many different ways that has nothing to do with hip hop. I don't like how he's embraced these streamers who are racist and homophobes and all. There's a lot of things Drake's been doing that have been unsavory. So if you don't want to hang out with that guy, good. I don't want you to hang out with him. But whether you do or not is not really any skin off my back, is my point. Now, for rap, if you're going to go on mixtapes and maybe potentially your album and say, oh, I'm saying this and this and this about you being a slave to Lucian and doing dumb deals, and look at me, I got a good deal with Lucian, and I write my rhymes, and all this other, and you go on tour and nobody's showing up because all you are propped up by bots, when we know Drake had a tour that was supposed to happen in Australia that got kind of bizarrely canceled, and we don't really know why. These are things when we start talking about who is Cole talking about in these mixtapes, who these bars related to. These are the things that make sense. These are the things that would add up to this new information that apparently Cole and Jake aren't on speaking terms. Because Cole, if he's taking shots just randomly, not really thinking about who they're going at, well, he's shooting a little indiscriminately in a way that's hitting a lot of people. And Cole, I would think, is too smart and too good at this, like he's elite as a rapper, to not know that, hey, someone could take this the wrong way. Especially after what happened with the Kendrick thing, where Kendrick took first-person shooters the wrong way. And I think there was a chance, not a whole thing, but a chance that he may have not thought Kendrick would take it that way. My whole theory on this, just a small theory. I know I'm running along, I'm running out of time, and I gotta go because I gotta cook dinner. But my theory on this has always been, I think, because I was actually listening to First Person Shooter today in preparation for the show, to where it all began, right? And I remember at the time, that whole line about, like, you know, everybody steppers will F it. I'm coming for everybody. I'm cleaning my breakfast, whatever it was. Like, I remember when I heard that, I was like, that sounds like a Kendrick Lamar diss to me. And I didn't feel like people really took it that way. I was like, am I like in a alternate reality? Am I the only one who didn't hear that? Who used the word steppers randomly? We know that was the name of Kendrick Lamar's album with the big, what's the name in the Big Steppers, right? Like, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Like, what steppers? We don't know. Like, what are you talking? Like, the only reference anyone would ever go to is immediately Kendrick Lamar. But it's almost like people, and because he had the Big Three line about how they're the Big Three and stuff, like people like didn't like, oh, it was just whatever. I was like, I don't know, that sounds like this to me. But and then Kendrick probably is like, I see you with that guy that everyone knows I hate, and you're talking about, everybody step will F it. I'm coming to clean up my breakfast. Like, that sounds like you're taking shots at me with a guy I hate. So therefore, are you an op? What's going on? Like, I saw that stuff and it seemed to make sense, but no one else went that way. But I listened back to it, today to kind of get a feel for that, and I was like, oh yeah, there were shots that were there for sure that could be interpreted this way. So that standpoint, you can interpret it that way. I could see maybe J. Cole being like, oh, like, I bigged you up a couple of lines before. Why would you think I was dissing you? And maybe he thought he was just having fun, just playing with words and saying he's the best. The whole song, like, he's on a song with a guy who's saying the Big Three, he's saying he's the best. So he's kind of also dissing Drake on the song in theory. But I can see where signals get crossed. Now that all of this has happened, and then he puts those bars in on Birthday Blizzard, that stuff is not by accident. Like, DJ Clue, and respect to Clue, man. I really, first of all, just a legend and an icon in the rap game, and I really appreciate, like, him being a part of this and his contributions to hip hop. And I know he did an interview, I think it was on Breakfast Club, and he's talking about, oh, why are you guys getting into, like, who's rapping about who? They just rapping. Let them just rap and move on and stuff. Clue, respectfully, no. Respectfully, like I'm not gonna call you son, but like, Captain America, and I forgot what movie it is, but he's like, son, don't. Like, that's kind of how I feel. I'm like, Clue, don't. Like, we're not dummies. We're not idiots. Like, he's sending obvious shots. We want to know what it's about. It's okay to surmise and question why they're happening. It's like, oh, just don't listen and just listen to the music and just be on. What do you guys want? First, you guys say, oh, you guys don't care about lyrics. You guys don't care about skill. All you guys care about is just beats and things. All right, well, now we're caring about the lyrics and we're trying to actually decipher. Like, no, don't listen to my lyrics. Don't decipher my lyrics. Just listen to the song. Just listen to the beat. Just listen to the melody. I'm like, what? Do you want us to actually care about lyrics or do you not? So when Clue was saying that, I was like, Clue, like, also respectfully, like, your tapes and songs you produce and things like that, I can't remember. Like, it's infinite how many diss tracks and shots that have been sent on mixtapes that you've put out that have led to real beefs and stuff. You're the last person I'm listening to be like, oh, don't listen to the song for disses. Like, you're only perpetuating negativity. I'm like, now your whole career was on negativity, but like, you put out mixtapes where people were dissing people all the time. You're the last person I'm listening to be like, oh, don't care about lyrics and whether or not people are dissing people. You're a very rich, very successful man in part because of people getting on your tapes and getting on your beats and getting on your radio stations and dissing people. So get out of here with that, Clue. Respectfully. You're an icon, but come on. That was ridiculous. So I think this is fascinating. One other quick note on the J. Cole thing, man. He did also put out that there's a new cover for the album that's coming out next week on 2/6, the Fall Off. And there were also some interesting details in that album that I think are important to this too. So he put out a new album cover. I don't have it in front of me. You can go check it out. It's not a huge deal if I don't have it in front of me. But it's a new album cover. he tells a story about, like the first album cover that we see, which is that room, which I think most J. Cole fans knew that was. But that's the room where essentially he wrote his first rap song ever. He's talked about this in podcasts and how important it was for him and how it was a big moment for him. And the picture that's the official album cover is from that room and where he was when he wrote his first song. And as he's prepping this to be kind of his last album, it's poetic in that regard. But then what he adds in this is that he posted now a second album cover. It's a picture of him. It's nothing really discriminating about it, but it's a beautiful portrait. It's a nice picture. And he said that this is like the second album cover that he's putting. And it's going to be on the CD version. So you want to order the CD version. I have no idea who has CDs anymore or where you play a CD anymore. I actually, in theory, Andre, we have an older car, so we actually can't play CDs in our car. But unless you have an older car, I don't know where else you would play a CD. But if you want to buy a J. Cole CD, the album cover you will have will not be the picture of his room. It's going to be a current picture of him. And he said how he wanted this to be, he wanted it as the album evolved into a double album. He said after the events of, quotes, 2 years ago, that he said, quote, still feed the algorithm to this day. I can only imagine he's talking about that rap beef. I don't know what. Otherwise, otherwise you're trolling. To be clear, otherwise you're trolling. To be clear, that's the only other thing to say. If it's not about what happened with Kendrick and Drake and everything from 2 years ago, because that's what we talking about. What happened 2 years ago, then that's what it is. And it's really more a year and a half. You know what I mean? Then I have no idea what you're talking about. But he said based on what happened 2 years ago, the album evolved into a double album. Like he'd been working his album for 7 years, and it was done essentially. And then something happened 2 years ago, and the album evolved. And he said he got reinvigorated. His spirit was reinvigorated. He got more motivated. It ended up making more songs and creating more music for the album that then now has made it become a double album. And he says it's from events that happened 2 years ago that still feed the algorithm to this day. And what have we heard? A lot of this, especially during these bars, and a lot of the bars we've talked a lot about who's he beefing with rappers. A lot of these bars that were disses were like to like fans and to like definitely people who are like commentators and podcasters who live off just drama, who live off just like talking about beef and things like that. Like a lot of the most vicious shots were to them. So like the fact that we know he already feels a way about that aspect of it and the algorithm, people want to feed an algorithm. He's saying that this album evolved because of what happened 2 years ago for an event that still feeds the algorithm to this day. I know Ray was on here before, he was on there now. Ray said he wanted an answer to whether or not he'd get J. Cole responding to how he felt about what was going on during that time. We got some tea leaks that, first of all, those people that were talking crazy in our comments, like, oh, what are you talking about? You already did it on Poor Antonio, and you guys, all you care about is beef. We don't care about... You heard Birthday Blizzard. Cole had stuff to say. He did respond. He did allude to things that happened during that time. He didn't go full tilt, but he did say stuff. And that's just a 4-song mixtape of freestyles. Now he has an album where he's going to have a cohesive story and a cohesive vision that he's putting across that he says changed because of events that happened 2 years ago. This is going to get very interesting. And I'm curious. I meant to say it for him when we talked about this yesterday, but I kind of, I got my mind racing. I'm doing a bunch of things here at once. But if Cole is trying to make this his retirement album, I would just tell him this. Keep that pen handy. Keep that booth open. Because I get the impression that if he really is going to really air out how he feels about things that happened over the course of that beef, and he feels a negative way about it potentially, and he wants to address Drake in a negative way or still Kendrick in a negative way, I don't think it's going to be like, all right, well, hi, bye, happy retirement, see you later. There's going to be stuff fired back, and I think he's going to have to get back in a booth. That'd be my last thing on that. I promised I'd get to the Reggie Miller thing, but we're already 2 hours, 15 minutes late. I promise we will talk about it tomorrow. I swear on everything, we will talk about Reggie Miller and these Derrick Rose comments. I hate teasing niggas and not getting to them. It drives me mad. So I'm very upset about that. But this was, I just, we're in the flow of this, man. Again, it's 40 days, 40 nights. There's structure. Obviously, it's not just flying by the seat of our pants thing, but it is. I'm going to, if I'm feeling a certain way about something, we're gonna go. We're gonna talk, and things gonna have to be adjusted, and that's okay. I think that makes for a better show. I think that makes for a more organic show, and I hope you guys are enjoying this ride I'm on, man. It's been a lot of fun doing this. So yeah, I really appreciate y'all. I really appreciate everything we're doing here. We're coming up to the end of week 2 tomorrow. So day 15 will come up tomorrow. It's been a really fun stuff, man. So again, of course, this is 40 Days, 40 Nights. You can, to people watching this on YouTube, shout out to folks on YouTube. You can always, of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel, New Generation Media. Be sure to like the video. Be sure to give us a comment. Be sure to do whatever you can to support the channel in any way. We greatly appreciate that. Be sure to follow me on X, EJ_Stewart, which you see right there. That's where I am streaming live currently on X. I'm also streaming live on Instagram, Action EJ. And then below, we got social media handles for like our actual podcast channel and stuff. So you want to follow us on social media there. I know we're not as active on there, but I'm trying to work on that. That's gonna be something we're gonna get to. So scroll on the bottom right now. New Generation Pod on X, New Generation Podcast on Instagram. And I am posting clips from the shows on our Instagram feed for sure. So if you want to catch clips from the show, be sure to follow us there as well. And of course, this audio version, just like all episodes, we podcast it on New Generation Podcast Network. So be sure to subscribe to the channel there, New Generation Podcast Network, where you can catch Night 14 and every other episode of 40 Days and 40 Nights on the New Generation Podcast Network, similar to YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. Give us a 5-star review. Comment if you can. Leave a review if you can. All of that stuff is greatly appreciated. That was fun. That was a fun show, man. I really enjoyed that one. Thank you guys so much for checking me out for 40 Days, 40 Nights. I couldn't believe what I said earlier. I completed 28 shows. 28 shows in 2 weeks. That's not counting my WFA shows. So I did 29 shows technically. It's a haul. It's a haul, but it's been a lot of fun. And you guys have made it fun. You guys are the reason why I'm doing this. And you guys are powering me through this, and it's been a blast. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep the fun times going. We'll get some more guests going. This is, we still got a long ways to go. We're not even halfway done. So keep it locked here. I'll see you guys in a little bit. Have a good evening. I'll see you guys in the morning. Peace.